across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Lively stuff with Julia. She's back tomorrow, of course, at 10 o'clock right here on Talk. Looking forward to that. Loads to come this afternoon, including this. How much danger is the UK in when it comes to an Iranian response to our inclusion to the war after the arson terror attack in Golders Green on Monday? There seems to be a connection to a previously unknown Iranian group. We'll come to that in a few moments. Is Iran a terror threat to the United Kingdom? Your comments, please. Also, a senior Conservative peer is set to warn Keir Starmer today that successive governments have ignored his warnings, leaving white working-class boys the worst performing group in England's schools. The Tory peer who wrote that key race report, we reported on this yesterday, we were ahead of the game on this, says that those kids are still languishing at the bottom of the class. And we got such a big response on that yesterday, we're bound to throw out that question again about the plight of white working class boys. And the Conservatives claim that Ed Miliband's net zero fantasism is harming the UK economy. The Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, is attempting to push for the Rosebank oil and Jackdaw gas North Sea projects to proceed. Full details to come. Are we missing a trick? I think we all know the answer to that. Everything you need to know. We will bring you all of that, all the breaking news as ever, right here on Talk. Ways to get in touch if you want to phone us or leave a voice note. It's 0344 499 1000, or you can message on 87222. Is Iran a terror threat to the United Kingdom? Now, look, we all like a bit of general knowledge, yeah? You know, knowing your capital cities, having a mental list of all the kings and queens of the last 100 years, being able to name the inventor of the printing press or the author of War and Peace, that kind of thing. We now, though, live in a world where we have to learn the names of new terrorist organisations. It's quite a growing list, and the latest one is this: Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah. That is the latest one. They don't officially feature, by the way, in any counter-terrorism database. No social media footprint, no real history, which is what makes it more mysterious, because on Monday the group circulated footage of burning ambulances outside the synagogue in Golders Green with its logo on the Telegram page. Now, that would suggest to anyone, you haven't got to be the greatest investigator, that maybe this other shady group, this new group on the block, are perhaps responsible. The ongoing war with Iran, of course, does pose real and growing danger in the UK. Their foreign minister, we've had it from the horse's mouth, explicitly warned that British lives are in danger following the UK's decision to allow the US forces to use British bases for strikes on Iranian targets. That warning cannot be dismissed lightly. It's unequivocal. It was said out loud, and that's something we have to keep in mind. We know that Iranian drones, of course, already struck the UK's RAF Akrotiri base in Cyprus, demonstrating both its intent and its reach. The threat is no longer theoretical. Even London's police commissioner, Mark Rowley, who's chosen to give an interview on all of this area, but not to a British broadcaster, to ABC in America, he's been talking about this. It's fascinating and revealing. Have a listen.
Some of the terrorism we've been wrestling with for a couple of decades, like the Islamist terrorist groups, all the way through to some of the tension in communities, the way those things now link together is really troubling, and I don't know if you've ever reported it, but we've disrupted over 20 Iranian-directed plots in the UK in the last couple of years. Sort of my team's working with our security service, MI5.
Are these sleeper cells that you're dealing with that have been awakened by the war, or are these known entities?
Sleeper cells, not really a term I would use, but they're known entities. These are ongoing operations, and we've seen over the last few years the sort of hostile state directed threat from sort of Iran, Russia and China sort of steadily going up, and we've had a lot more operations. And if you look at UK news, you'll have seen quite a few prosecutions on that effect in the last couple of years.
That is worrying, confirming 20 Iran-backed plots have been disrupted over the last 2 years, involving Iranian operatives hiring attackers through the dark web to target dissidents, Jewish institutes, you name it. And now we are clearly on that list as a country, not as a religion, as a country, as a government. Just this week, 2 Iranian men were charged with surveying Jewish community locations in London on behalf of Iranian intelligence. MI5's Director General reported last October that security services had tracked more than 20 potential lethal Iran-backed plots in the previous year alone. Again, targeting dissidents, journalists, Israelis, Jewish communities. Now, of course, there is a potential, and the smart money says that it's a wider brief from Iranian terrorism. Is Iran a threat to the UK? Are we safe on our streets? The UK terror threat, let me remind you, is currently rated at substantial, meaning that an attack is considered likely. The Defence Minister John Healey confirmed it is under review. We also know that analysts have noted that if missiles that Iran fired at Diego Garcia were in reverse direction, they could potentially reach London. This is serious stuff. Are you hearing a serious response from our government? And yet, by the way, and I've said this, and still to this day, I've not heard a single politician raise this, and I would have thought whether you are a left-winger or a right-winger, Tory, Reform, Lib Dems or Labour, everybody would get on board with this specific point. We have an open borders policy on the channel where Iranians regularly make up part of the 70% of the most common group of nationalities. Iranians are always in there. And yet, to this day, if you arrive from Iran on a boat to Dover, you'll be sort of protest, put in a hotel, you're free to wander. Can anyone make sense of that, please? Just on that one specific, regardless of all the other stuff, which is huge and really important, just that one specific point, we allow, was it yesterday, a couple of days ago, 500 people coming across the channel. That's likely to continue as the weather gets even better. There is clearly a demonstrable threat. Mark Rowley said it out loud. MI5 have acknowledged it. The Defence Secretary telling us where the terror warning currently is. Substantial, meaning an attack is considered likely. Are you really fit? Have you heard Keir Starmer talk about this? Now, you don't want to scare the pants off old ladies, to coin the phrase, but let's have a reality check. Is Iran a terror threat to the UK? Are we looking at the potential of what we saw in Golders Green as being just the start of something even worse? Your thoughts on that, your thoughts on the channel issue as well. I even put it to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, the other day. Will you ask the Home Secretary about this? He said, yeah, I will ask about that. To my knowledge, he didn't. Why not? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Steve N. Allen, the comedian and broadcaster, is with us to chew the fat on, well, there's a variety of stuff here, from the good, the bad, and, of course, the ugly as well. I mean, let's start, Steve, with Britain being safe. I mean, there's all this talk about sleeper cells. You know, this is the stuff out of a sort of Jack Bauer 24 episode ordinarily, but it's now very real.
It's very real, and it's one of our greatest weaknesses, isn't it? The threat of the idea of a missile making its way over here, terrifying, and we're all reminded of what it was like when we heard about foreign nations being able to reach us in 45 minutes or whatever, but we also kind of presume we as a nation have the tech, the military might to kind of stop a missile.
Yeah.
Whereas what you can't do is stop all of these sleeper cells. They're terrifying because of how innocuous they are, aren't they? They're clearly under the radar. That's what the sleeper part means. And the way in which these terrorist acts are done are so small in comparison to military might. All it takes is for one person to do something evil, and then you know the reason behind it. It's a terror thing. What I would say, though, is the way that we see in the news today is if somehow it's a heightened situation because of our involvement in this war in Iran. I don't know. I think we're also part of the West. And it feels like the West is the target as well from Iran.
Possibly.
It's not just, there's not like a list. I don't think if we didn't let our bases be used early doors, if we had never let the bases used, I don't think we would have been hearing from the Iranian terrorists death to the West, but not them. No, they didn't let their bases be used. We still would have been in this anyway.
That's true, but we have put our head above the parapet somewhat, haven't we, with obviously allowing that to happen. Keir Starmer announcing at the weekend that he would increase America's ability to use our bases. Plus, of course, we have for years, you know, when Iran and countries like that look around the world, they very distinctly seem to see us as sort of America's little brother.
Yeah, because we are. That's what I mean. If we hadn't have been involved. But our involvement also happened after one of our bases was targeted. So I'm not incredibly sure we can fully be blamed for our involvement. But I understand that logical argument won't be swaying any Iranian terrorist mind. But I don't know, it feels as though even if you are not involved in this at all, you're still going to get some Iranian flack. I mean, look, they had missiles going into like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who you wouldn't presume they were seen as this concept of the West they wanted to attack. There was some flailing that happened. And also when you say sleeper cell, you're right, it seems Jack Bauer, it seems terrifying. But there are different levels, aren't there? There's terror inspired by. So it's not like there's an official memo that comes down from the Iranian regime. Who knows what that is, given that the Ayatollah is apparently in a coma. So I'm not sure where they're getting the messages from. But someone makes a decision and it makes its way directly to a sleeper cell. Or are there just some people motivated by what's happening to then do terror? Which, if anything, is more worrying.
But of course, it shouldn't be any surprise, should it, in some respects? Because whilst it's shocking to think of people who want to carry out, you know, the arson attack in Golders Green, which appears to have the hallmarks. I mean, the police, I think, wanted to call it a sort of a hate crime. Could be more than that, but certainly something is going on there. But I mean, it shouldn't be. We've had, you know, for years, a very distinct view of the medieval regime that has been running Iran. The idea that some wrong-uns over there might make their way to here should not, in any shape or form, be any kind of surprise, right?
Yeah, and you're right. The question of knowing that there'll be some people, or at least knowing that the bad people, the people who wish to come and do harm, can use the system as it stands. Yeah. I think that's your point, isn't it? It's not, you're not saying everyone. No one's saying this. Everyone who comes over here will be a terrorist. The point is the same argument that's made by women about men on dates. You know, they're not all men, but it's the risk. So the fact that we have a system where someone can get into the country and possibly sneak in with enough kit to do the low-level terror that they're trying to do, should be acted upon. And you're right, we've known about it for long enough that there should be some system to try and deal with it.
Well, you'd think so. I mean, the Channel story, I just find, just on an intellectual basis, absolutely infuriating. Since 2018, around about 180,000 people have come to this country. Iran form up part of a chunk of there's about 3 countries, and Iran being one of them, that form 70% of the people that arrive on those boats. And it changes around. It was Albanians for a little while, but certainly early doors, Iran was a huge cohort of people that tried to make their way into the UK. Now, you haven't got to be a conspiracy theorist. You haven't got to be a right-wing nut job to go, it's just possible. A couple of those have been sleeping for the last couple of years, and they're about to manifest. Why would you not be taking that seriously? Why would the whole channel crossing thing be? The channel should be in special measures, that phrase they would normally apply to any area that's failing badly. I mean, it's already bad, but wouldn't now be the time when you go, right, guys, on the boat, we know you're not all wrong, and you're not all rapists, you're not all terrorists. We know that, but I'm afraid there's a flipping war on, mate. We don't know who the hell you are, where you've come from, what your intention is. You're coming to Parkhurst.
Yeah, or set up some area that you'd end up having to use the word detained, and that's the thing that kicks people off, triggered by a word. But you'd still be offering asylum. You'd still be having a system. Like, if people were being processed on a third country, which often seems to be the way to solve this, you'd be effectively doing the same. You're keeping people in one area while you process their claim. Little asterisk, the claim processing should be way quicker than it is, of course, but it's because our Home Office is an absolute state. But having that, so you can just keep people in one area, you'd have to use the word detained, but you know what? You're still offering asylum. You're doing the thing that they want. And if someone hates the idea of that so much, maybe they're the ones to watch out for. Do you know what I mean? If you're genuinely running away from a war and you think, I have to spend a couple of weeks, couple of months or whatever in this facility before I'm granted this life free of the war, sign me up. Anyone who doesn't like to sign me up might be the ones thinking, why do I not get to go out there and do the bad stuff?
Indeed. Let's move to this story, Steve. We touched on this yesterday, slightly ahead of the game at this end on this one, but it comes out today, 5 years after the Sewell Commission. New analysis confirms that disadvantaged young white working class boys in England remain among the lowest performing pupils in key exams. A persistent underachievement has been identified, and it's carried on since 2021. Let's have a listen to what Lord Sewell has said on this.
I really want to help, and I'm doing it already, and I'm working with the teachers in those areas. White working class boys, particularly, you know, my vision is to help them. You know,
well, they've been neglected.
That's right,
they?
for years.
Yeah.
And you know, and then I got a phone call with a friend of mine, a close relative, and they were upset. Why would you want to work for working class white children?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought,
well, that's racism. That's racism.
Why would you say that? Yeah. And I said to him, you know, I wrote back and said, that's the problem we've got in England at the moment, this division. You're making this division.
So we're here again, Steve. Look, I know you went to Eton and Oxbridge and all that, so you probably don't really know much about this story, Steve. But, you know, the white working classes, young boys in particular, are lowest rung of the educational ladder, and it hasn't shown any signs of changing.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Eton once when I got lost off the M4. But as a lad from Mansfield, no, these are my people, right? So, of course, the annoying thing with this story is it's coming up again, and the story this time is we told you the facts last time and you refused to do anything with it. So let's have the same discussion again. Class, there's the problem. That's the thing that holds you back. And of course it would, because it's kind of linked to opportunity and money and all of these things. How do you measure class? Effectively, you'd measure it through the things that don't give you an advantage in life. So anyone in that working class bracket has a bit of a disadvantage, and then every other group gets a step up, don't they? So if you're a girl, then there'll be some groups that are trying to sort out the gender pay gap issues, lifting up the girls. If you're from an ethnic minority background, there'll be some group trying to lift you up. And there's one that's left after all of this, and it's the white lads who have no group trying to say, let's lift you up as well. And as we heard from that clip, not only that, there's a sense that if you do try and help them, that should be frowned upon, because it's not like the whiteness is the thing that's being protected. It's that every other category has the ability to be lifted up, and there's one that's being left behind. But the problem here isn't whiteness. The problem here is class. And then the report is really good when it talks about family structure as well. So the reason you're in the working class might mean that, you know, because you've got the family structure's not there, whereas if you're working class from a migrant background, maybe you, from your culture, still have a better view of family structure, so you're more likely to have the full nuclear family. Sure. And these things do help.
Steve, stay with us. Loads more still to come, and we'll continue, by the way, to take your calls on that, the white working class boys story. Did it yesterday, absolutely chock-a-block switchboard. There's so much more to be said on it. If you want to jump in on that one, you're welcome to. 0344 499 1000. Amanda says it's beyond belief and terrifying that our government is actually welcoming potential Iranian terrorists into our country with incentives and open arms. That is literally what is happening. OK, even if you said, well, 90% of the Iranian guys on the boats, they don't mean any harm. So, that just leaves 10% then. That could run into hundreds, possibly thousands. Thoughts on that? This one comes in from Chris, who says, how can you take any notice of a threat system which only has elevated stakes? This is the Defence Secretary confirming that the current threat is substantial. It's a fair point. Chris says, I think it's called conditioning. Well, it might be that. I know that is a theory, that if you put that out there, it kind of conditions people to sort of act or respond in a certain way. I don't know what other... If they said nothing at all, they'd be in trouble. Chris says, P.S. check your website email. I want to send you a book. I don't even know if there is still a website. I don't even know if there's still a website, for God's sake. I mean, give it a go, Chris, but if nobody responds, that's probably because someone has gone into the system with a big fat spanner and knackered it. Always worth a try. Thank you to him. Thank you to Amanda. Thank you to others. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Steve and Alan with us. More stories to come. This is Talk.
welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle from Suits. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel.
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This in from Brad in Cambridge, who says, if there have been 22 Iran-backed terror attacks foiled in the past 2 years, how the heck can we blame the current situation on our involvement with the war? Straightforward logic, it isn't. But well, it wouldn't be exclusively, you're right, Brad, but I guess it could have accelerated the possibility. I guess that's the territory we're sort of in. Steve N. Allen is with us, looking at the stories of the day. And it's the Home Secretary on this one, Steve. Shabana Mahmood pushing for a payment by results arrangement with the French. It's like an episode of Roadrunner, isn't it? They've tried every mechanism to try and, that didn't work. Let's try another way of doing it. Nothing seems to work. This is to combat channel crossings, of course. The New Deal they're carving out is up to the wire, this one. Shabana Mahmood is seeking to renew a £478 million 3-year deal. This was originally negotiated by Rishi Sunak, of course, to put more patrols on French beaches. Let's have a listen to Keir Starmer, though, sounding all excited about that one deal he made with his best pal, Emmanuel Macron. How many more deals do you think we need? Have a listen.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and get the results that people want to see.
What a load of old cobblers. I tell you what, literally none of that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, the way he sold that, I mean, if it was a commercial, the advertising standards would be on him, wouldn't they? Going, sorry, mate, that's just a load of lies. You can't say that stuff. We returned to front. No, this is the one in, one out go, which didn't really work anyway, because lots came in and very few went out, and even if they did go out, somebody else came in their place who apparently they'd already gone through the system. So it was a complete mess, made not a jot of difference to anybody, hasn't deterred anything, and hasn't smashed any gangs.
Oh, yeah, thoroughly. I mean, it was last weekend, there was the story of the 4 cases of people who've been sent back to France, and let's remember that therefore means at least 4 people came in, or 4 people plus their dependents, who then came back in a lorry. So you've ended up with the people you first started with, plus had to take extra people from France. It's not one in, one out. It's more in than we originally would have had in if this scheme weren't in place. I know they keep saying it's a pilot scheme and therefore, it's not up to speed yet. Well, do it then. Because if it's a pilot scheme, it's utterly pointless. If all you're doing is a handful of people, then you're not spending your time focusing on this. But there's no incentive for France to do it, is there? You can try and make it payment by results. They don't want the payment. They don't care about the payment. No. And in a sense, we should have a bit of sympathy for them. Remember that little brief time in history when the Rwanda deal was apparently making people trying to escape the UK into Ireland? And I didn't run to the border to try and stop them either. Because that's what it's like, isn't it? When a problem tries to leave your border, you can't really... How much money would you have to pay France for them to really think, no, let's try and keep the migrants here even though they want to leave?
Spot on. And let's move to this story. The Telegraph's Great British Class Survey, I love this, has identified food deliveries as a key social indicator. So the wealthiest 7% of the country average 7 monthly takeaways. That's significantly more than the lowest 20% in economic and cultural scores who order only 1 or 2. How often does your house sound like this?
Deliveroo! Chinese, KFC, Wagamama, Greek salad, no carbs before marbs, Karen.
You see, I think this is round the wrong way, Steve, because I thought that if it was about class, that the upper echelons wouldn't go near Deliveroo if you kind of paid them to. I always thought it was all the other groups that like to order a takeaway.
Yeah, I love the fact that they're calling them elite.
The elites.
KFC? Are you sure? Look, don't get me wrong, a military background. Maybe KFC's the wrong example. The Colonel, I'm sure, is a fine, upstanding man. But the idea of fast food, greasy food, being brought straight to your face is not the sign of being upper class. The word elite is not right. What you mean is can afford a takeaway. There are now two groups in the lower echelons, and they're distinguished by can afford takeaways because they can't bother to eat and don't care about how bad it is for you, and can't afford takeaways. Actually, it's not even can't afford takeaways.
Yes.
This is can't afford to get takeaways delivered to you. Some of us are still walking to the takeaway and taking it away, as I believe the original concept was.
That's the idea.
It's not real. None of us are posh. Do you know what I mean? Some of us just have to use a bit more shoe level.
I had a very exciting trip to my takeaway. Just I forgot to mention this on air. Just a Friday or two ago, ordered me curry, went to pick it up. Place I've been to lots of times. In I go. There's an immigration raid going on. I couldn't believe it. I thought, you know, every now and again you see a couple of coppers, don't you, in a takeaway, and they're just on their break, just getting food. And I thought, oh, there's a lot of police officers in here. There's about 20 of them. It's only a small... And I looked, and it said immigration enforcement on the back of their thing. Yeah. They had the cuffs out. They were taking folk away. I don't know what the upshot of that was, but you see, that's the reason why you should go and pick it up yourself, because you get exciting moments like that.
How was the food, though? Was it just all they were serving?
The food was great.
The egg and chips
never what I was hoping for. Normally when I go in there, they go, "Oh, it'll be about 10 minutes. So do you want to wait? Would you like a beer while you wait, or something like that?" But when I looked around, I realised because it's a takeaway and a place you can sit and eat, there was nobody in there eating. They'd obviously asked all the customers to leave. The fella that served me was sweating like I don't know what, and he, like literally the most nervous man in the world, handed me this bag like this, shaking away. He was like a little whippet on a cold day. So yeah, I don't know what the upshot of that was, but you see, that's the sort of level of excitement you get when you go. You see, you don't get that with your Deliveroo, although you know it does kind of come with other problems, doesn't it? Having your stuff delivered, like the time it often takes.
Oh, yeah. I don't do a lot of these delivery things, but they can just, like, change your order and just refund your money or something. The other day, because of having kids, sometimes, I can't leave the house. You've got to look after them and stuff. I have a bit of a small shop sent, and they'll just cancel it and just refund you. And like, oh, great, so I just have no food with me and the kids. Great. So it's not a good system.
Well,
but it doesn't make me elite.
But there are things within the system they don't do on the Deliveroo thing. So, for example, you mentioned Colonel Sanders. Why has he never been canonised, by the way? Why is it not Saint Colonel Sanders? I mean, it just seems
because of all the obesity.
You think so? Yeah, but what the man...
because of the diabetes.
But the happiness Colonel Sanders has brought to the planet is immeasurable, frankly. Nonetheless, so Colonel Sanders... you couldn't get that delivered where I live. There wasn't one nearby. And then I was away. My other half said, "Oh, I'm going to get the boys at KFC. It's popped up on the Deliveroo app." Fantastic. This is great news. And I did think, when she told me that, I thought, well, it's about at least half an hour away, I think, from the nearest. So why don't they put a little note saying, yep, you can order this, but it will taste like crap when it arrives. It will be cold. It won't be recovered in a microwave. It's not going to be like the original thing. So order away, go nuts with your order, but it will taste horrendous. You should get that really as a caveat, shouldn't you?
Yeah. When that fat starts to congeal, there's no going back. I don't think you're ready for that jelly.
The Colonel would be spinning in his grave if he thought his chook was being dispensed in such an irrational manner, Steve.
Yeah, it was 11 secret herbs and spices, and 7 of them are salt. So he knew what he was doing.
And 3 are sugar. So there you go. We've almost solved it. Listen, Steve, great to have you on as ever. Steve N. Allen, the comedian and broadcaster, with us on the programme. 0344 499 1000. That's where we are. Loads of questions from the light-hearted, as you heard, and the more serious stuff. Is Iran a terror threat? Now a genuine terror threat to the United Kingdom. We'll get some voices on that. More comment from you on the way as well. 0344 499 1000. You can leave a voice note there as well. Just gone 1:30.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 0344 499 1000. So, this organisation that translates as the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Right, Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah is the correct, probably not the correct pronunciation, but it's certainly the correct set of words. Pretty much unknown till about 3 weeks ago, lacking any sort of counter-terrorism or social media presence. They weren't really on the radar, but reportedly linked to Iran, the group recently circulated Telegram footage showing its logo besides those burning ambulances outside a synagogue in North London just yesterday. A clear sign of Iranian intelligence operatives operating and residing covertly in the UK. Perhaps what is going on here? Let's speak with Barak Sina, who's an Associate Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. Barak, good afternoon to you. I mean, we know already that, you know, there have been, Iran was already on the radar, 20 apparently foiled attempts, says the chief of the Met in recent years. What happened on Monday with these ambulances, I mean, the jury is still out a little bit, but what we can all agree on is that there is definitely an area for a little bit of concern here.
There's a huge amount of concern. One of the reasons as well is that it's self-generated. Look, the British government is lagging behind every other government that has prescribed Iran's IRGC as a terrorist organization. Even now, the British government refuses to prescribe the IRGC as a terrorist organization. Bear in mind that the Labour Party, in its manifesto, one of its central points was to prescribe the IRGC a terrorist organization. And I published a very important report called The Long Arm of Tehran, Why the UK Should Ban the IRGC. And this has not only been going on multiple times in the UK, it has also happened across Europe. Now, in 2022, Ken McCallum, the director of MI5, he asserted Iran's aggressive intelligence services that project a threat to UK security. And one way for the Iranian regime to project this threat is to cultivate foreign assets, whether it be British Shias that go on pilgrimage to religious sites in Iran, then the IRGC meets them, attempts to recruit them, in order to perhaps conduct surveillance here in the UK on targets or sites which become real potential threats. And it's happened to British officials, Israeli officials, prominent Jewish officials or synagogues. But regardless of who it is, it's undermining British sovereignty. And as the conflict in the Middle East escalates and Iran's military, whether it gets decapitated or whether it be severely degraded, it lacks the conventional means to strike out against its adversaries. So what it does instead is uses its terrorist proxies to create an uptick in security risk internationally. So, yes, this is an enormous, enormous threat. And may I just add one final point? The prevent strategy, the counterterrorism strategy, any counter-radicalization strategy, it's really been focused on countering radical Sunni threats, not Shia threats that are sponsored by the Iranian regime. And it means that not only are we not prescribing the IRGC a terrorist organization, but Iranian proxies are able to cultivate this type of radical culture here in the UK, and which is it's just a hotbed in which terrorism can take place from.
In terms of the IRGC not being prescribed, and I've tried to look hard at this, Barak, and find a logical or intelligent reason why the government haven't gone there. I mean, I genuinely cannot find one. I mean, I'm not making that. I just cannot find a reasoned response as to why. I mean, it's hardly going to be, well, we don't want to scupper our trading arrangements with Iran. It's not going to be that. So, you know, I don't think there's a PR issue with it. What do you imagine could be the thinking behind this? Because you'd think, if not when they first came into power, but certainly right now, they'd be straight on top of this one.
I think you've got an alignment between lack of military capability, the lack of Britain to perhaps even have a missile defence here in the UK or on its bases abroad, its lack of ability to project meaningful power to complement the US in the Straits of Hormuz. And there's an alignment between that and a lack of political will. You know, resources, capabilities, and will are so closely connected with one another, and our sort of pacifism or appeasement is not only creating a vulnerability for our bases abroad, but our security here at home. And it's just, I think it's just part of a general malaise, decline that Britain is undergoing. And by the way, it's not only due to Keir Starmer. This has been a result of successive governments' oversights.
I made the point earlier, largely it's not a completely separate point, but I'm looking at the sort of channel migrant crossings that we have, which essentially is an open borders policy. Yeah. We know that there is a significant number of Iranians that make that route. They form part of a small group of countries that are up to about 70%. And certainly when they started monitoring channel crossings, I think Iran were the dominant group of people that came over. Given what is going on at the moment, you might think there'd be a very specific focus on the channel right now. There's nothing.
You're so right. Look, between 2015 and 2025, over 67,000 Iranians came into the UK claiming asylum. Wow. Just last year alone, 640 Iranians were identified attempting to come into the UK using clandestine means, right? Now, add to this the fact that you could have an Iranian official come into the UK with a diplomatic passport and conduct malign activities connected to the Iranian regime and the IRGC that is connecting with gangs who are conducting surveillance on targets, who are intimidating Iranian opposition groups, whether it be in cultural centres or in mosques, but they are intimidating opposition groups, and that's happening on UK soil. Look, just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke at a demonstration on behalf of the Iranian opposition, and there was enormous fear amongst that crowd that they could have been targets that day, because just the night beforehand, there had been somebody that had been pro the Iranian regime attacking an Iranian opposition member here on UK soil. So this is, you know, basically Britain is a free-for-all and everyone is fair game.
I mean, the bit I can never work out, Barack, about this kind of stuff, because every now and again, I'm sure you have that same feeling, you think, am I going mad here? Am I making something up in my head? The dots, it's not hard to join this together. You'd like to think that the big wigs at MI5, whether it's the Met, Kent Police, the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, everybody involved in this equation will be fully aware of everything we've just talked about.
Can I just say to you, I agree with everything you say. Look, we saw this deadlock, this malaise, this dysfunction right after Brexit. After Brexit took place, you would have anticipated the government decided to hold a referendum together, and therefore it would have created contingencies right afterwards to put into place immediately, such as which passport would you enter the EU states with afterwards. There was entire confusion I just think that the issue of security or military projection abroad is just part and parcel of a whole host of things in which this country is literally falling apart. It's beset by dysfunction and malaise, and I don't want to be speaking in generic manner or fear-mongering, but look, this isn't the country I grew up in.
Yeah.
And we are exposed and vulnerable in a very tangible manner vis-a-vis security and defence.
Spot on. Barak, very thorough stuff, sir. Thank you. And let's speak again on this. Barak Sina, who's Associate Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. Well, you heard it there. I mean, this is what this guy does. He researches this stuff day and night. He's on it. He's swatting up by the minute. It's an absolute mess out there. And when we asked the question, is Iran a terror threat to the UK, what did he say there? 65,000 Iranians have broken into this country since 2015 in varying means, like across the Channel and the like. Alan is in Aberdeen on this question of sleeper cells and those that might want to do us harm. Alan, what are your thoughts? Good afternoon.
Yeah, hiya. This goes far deeper than Iran. We've got ISIS sleeper cells. We've now got Iranian sleeper cells that have been here for years as well. We're dealing with people who think and plan a generation ahead. The Manchester synagogue, that was an ISIS attack, for example. So you've got every single jihadist group now under the Palestinian flag, and since it's got especially worse since the 7th of October. The government has sleptwalked, and I believe that this is far more than the government. I think that the infection within mainstream media, within our universities, is now in the government. We've got open support for Islamic jihadists sitting in our bloody parliament. All of this stemmed from universities. The infection started in the universities, within the far left and what have you, and it stemmed into now our institutions, into Parliament, into our media.
Well, we had it with everything from, quite clear evidence, things like the ambulance attacks yesterday in North London. There's that, but also when there was the football match when Villa were playing Tel Aviv Maccabi, there was that as well, where you had the I can't remember what the other story was that's similar to that, where you had the sort of Muslim elders talking about this is our territory, this is our neighbour, don't come round here. And then you had sort of members of parliament, as you rightly just said, Alan, sort of celebrating this point in the House of Commons. You think, this is the United Kingdom. What sort of bizarre place have we ended up with here?
Again, our institutions are infected.
Yeah.
When we've got open support for Islamic rape and murder, Islamic jihadist rape, murder, burning, they burned ambulances yesterday. Are we going to be seeing a repeat of burning people in the streets? Because that's what the lead up to. We're dealing with people who've been planning for a generation.
Yeah.
These people are thinking long term. And the problem is our government. And let's be honest, preventing all this are part of the problem as well. They thought that appeasement of these people would work. We are dealing with people who see a weakness. They see
100% the minute they spot a weakness. I mean, they must have been absolutely piddling themselves with joy over that football match thing. And matey in Whitechapel saying this is a Muslim area and this kind of thing. How would you imagine going down to Saudi Arabia and shouting that out in the streets? You'd have your Charlies chopped off by 6 o'clock. Alan, thank you very much indeed for that. You make a great point. You feed into a wider point as well on this one. Paul in Fife says everyone talks about the amount of money we should spend in defence, and I agree we should be spending more. However, equally more important is what we are spending money on. For example, how much money has been spent and continues to be spent on diversity issues? How much is spent in reducing the carbon emissions of our armed forces? These are just two examples of many that are totally unnecessary and jeopardise the effectiveness and the morale of the majority of our military personnel. I'm just waiting for our tank and aircrafts to be painted in rainbow colours. It's madness. I think that thing that took off for the, what was it called, the HMS Dragon, I thought that's what they were doing at one point, sticking the rainbow colours or getting the lanyards ready so that there's a nice Mardi Gras when they arrive, maybe. Who knows? Thank you, Paul, for that. 0344 499 1000. And this one in from Richard, who says, 6 years ago, I bothered my local MP for the first time to complain and warn that I was extremely worried about the number of unidentified young men coming across the channel in boats. I told of my worries that these people could include jihadi sleepers, rapists, disease, possibly worse. And now look where we are. We have a government of nodding, laughing, jeering, useless clowns who, with all the power they seem to wield, cannot even stop a rubber boat or suck up our own oil out of the sea. Previously, when war was threatened, we locked up and deported anyone from the enemy country and closed their embassies. Now we just keep on feeding them and giving them money. Unbelievable, says Dick in West Yorkshire. Dick is bang on. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. More of your calls on the way. Is Iran a terror threat to the UK? I think we've provided quite a big body of evidence just in the last 20 minutes as to why we should look over our shoulders, to say the least. Your thoughts on that? All the wider issues we're discussing as well. White working class boys still on the agenda. And what the heck is going on in the former Prince Andrew's back garden? You won't believe what he's had delivered. All that coming next on Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. It's 6 minutes to 2 o'clock, which gives us time to talk to Di Davis, former head of Royal Protection. There's another Di. Good afternoon. Nice to see. Nice that you're in the studio.
Nice to be
down
here.
The line
Nice,
as well.
really is. Yeah.
I thought you're the only person to talk to ask why the former Prince Andrew might have stuck what appears to be a huge mobile home in his back garden. Now, he's got a smaller house now, we know that much, but he's sort of got this kind of Alan Partridge-esque mobile home lobbed in the backyard. What's going on?
Well, it's a good question. I only heard about it today, I think, in one of the newspapers. Clearly, I think it's there for some kind of accommodation for his staff. Now, whether he's getting any kind of private security, I don't know. But clearly, it's there to accommodate somebody for whatever reason. I hope you and I aren't paying for that security, and if the King's paying it, I hope it's out of the King's pocket and not yours or mine.
You know what it's like to work up close and personal with the royals, so you'd have seen things I would never even ask you about. You know, people have a private life as well, so you know what it, you know, there's a bit of partying going on, all legit stuff, but stuff they wouldn't necessarily want pictures of, etc. So you've looked after these people. What do you make of where the royal family are now, in particular, obviously, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? I mean, this is it's not just a fall from grace, it's an absolute catapulting into a very nefarious form of oblivion.
Well, you're quite right, and I think he's brought great shame on the British royal family. Unfortunately, the big question is who knew what?
Yeah.
Who in the palace, who for many, many years. I'm told in 2011 there was a crisis team set up after some of the disclosures made by the Mail on Sunday. Somebody have known now for 15 years what on earth was going on, and unfortunately people have to ask that question because this is a criminal inquiry. Unlike in the past where the Met, I argue, have not investigated a variety of different offences over the years. I don't think they've got any option now, and if they don't, then serious questions will be asking of them and other police forces if they don't get a grip of this.
I mean, this Epstein story hasn't gone away, and in many respects, the obviously the specific investigation into Mountbatten Windsor is still a live issue, but it's very serious what he's facing. This is mostly about being in a public office and possibly spewing or leaking things or sharing details he shouldn't have shared. But there's still the actual issue itself of girls being trafficked around coming over to the UK, even if these people were above, you know, legal age and all of that. I think in this respect there's no suggestion otherwise, but it's pretty murky stuff, isn't it? You know, the Epstein files, they continue to trawl through them. There's all manner of horrific allegations against this man. Loads more documents are being looked at, and one of his best friends was the brother of our current monarch and the son of the previous one.
It is, and it's fair to say, yes, I think there are 10 police forces actually looking at the original allegation. And don't forget, it was Virginia who made, Virginia Roberts as she was then married Guthrie, if I'm pronouncing it right. Yes, we're going back, I think, to 2 separate investigations. We're looking at the trafficking, which is a criminal offence. Did he or anyone else know the Virginia was being trafficked? That's one issue. Other females in New York and in Little St James, they allegedly were being trafficked, and allegedly Andrew was part of that. So that's one issue which has never really been properly investigated, and I've been calling for that to be done. And of course we've now got all these police forces because the former Prime Minister Brown, amongst others, have asked for it. But what was interesting, doing my research, the Commissioner for Victims also expressed her concern after that infamous interview that the Met were not investigating it. And I'm still calling for an explanation now why 6 times they haven't investigated this properly, including the latest, where there's a press officer and allegedly a PPO involved. So there are big questions still for the Met, I say.
Just briefly, if you could, Di, because we are short on time, but where do the royals go from here? Because this has cast a real shadow. You know, Prince Charles, now King Charles, it was meant to be a new beginning. For some, it hasn't worked out like that. Suggestions that he should just quit, let William and Kate take over the big job there. What do you think?
I think it's the question where the investigation will go, who has the courage to take it where he should go, and I hope truth will come out. That's all I want, is justice, and if that involves the King, then so be it.
Do you think William and Kate will be, you know, swatting up with advisors as to the possibility of this happening?
Well, I hope they got better common sense advisors that some of the royals have had in the past. This is the worst crisis since Charles lost his head, in my opinion.
Di, thank you. Nice to see you, sir. Di Davis with us, former head of Royal Protection here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news at 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the Afternoon Empire. Yeah, good afternoon. It's also the home of common sense. How much danger is the UK in at the moment when it comes to the Iranian response to our inclusion in the war after that arson attack in Golders Green yesterday? There seems to be a connection to a previously unknown Iranian group. We're looking at that and the wider picture, and why are the government seemingly so inactive on prescribing very bad people, which they should be doing. Also this afternoon, Lord Sewell, the Conservative peer, is set to warn Keir Starmer today that successive governments have ignored his warnings, leaving white working-class boys to the worst performing group in England's schools. Now, we touched on this yesterday, got an amazing response as what's gone wrong. We're going to continue on this. Mr. Sewell, who wrote that key race report, says the group, white working class boys, still languishing at the bottom of the class. Your thoughts on that? And the Conservatives are claiming that Ed Miliband's net zero fantasism, as they call it, is harming the UK economy. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch is attempting to push for Rosebank Oil and Jackdaw Gas North Sea projects to proceed. Now, there's a big body of thought that should happen anyway, but is Red Ed likely to buckle under any sort of pressure? Spoiler alert, no. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. Loads of comment to get through on that question. Is Iran a terror threat to the United Kingdom? Adrian in Dublin says, great show. Is it any wonder that Iranians are still being allowed to pitch up on beaches, apart from others, and swan around with no security, even though we are being threatened by Iran? We're literally at war with Iran, and unknown Iranian nationals allowed to nip over the channel on a rubber boat and just mooch around as much as they like. Just look at when COVID struck. Well, after it was known that the virus epicenter was in China, with other areas hit badly, flights from these countries were still allowed to land and passengers allowed to travel through the UK freely. Madness in both cases, any idiot can see, except our feeble government, it seems. Are they really that incompetent, or is there something more sinister? And that includes the Conservatives, by the way, says Adrian in Dublin. All of that is spot on. Sometimes the ineptitude levels are so great. I mean, there's a great point that often gets forgotten. They knew about the COVID thing. This thing's travelling away like a demon around the world. And, you know, the epicenter is China. How many more flights came in from China? Oh, about 190 or something. What, since you knew about it? Yeah. Really? What, is that stupidity? Something else going on? I get it. Adrian, great message. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's major now on this section. Just in this point about the Lord Sewell report, that 5 years after the Sewell Commission, new analysis confirms that disadvantaged white working class boys in England remain among the lowest performing pupils. This is a persistent underachievement identified in 2021, probably was going on before then. Nothing has changed. What the heck is going on? Chris McGovern is the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Always good to get your views on these things, Chris. Now, I know a lot of the issue around this isn't about race, it's about class, and it's also not about school teachers, it's more about family life. Nonetheless, we are naturally, you know, we explore all avenues of what the heck is going on here. And what is disappointing, it seems that in 5 years, no lessons have been learned.
No lessons have been learned. Look, there are many failures in our education system, but the biggest failure of all is the way we're letting down white working class boys. And in some ways, this is a surprise, because if you go to China, we know from the international evidence that the children and the boys of the street cleaners in China, they are outperforming the average in our very best schools. Wow. In mathematics, for example. So, I mean, so there's no excuse for this, because ultimately you need good teachers, but also you need parental support. And one of the problems we have is some parents are indeed feckless. You know, I took over a failing school after I retired as a head teacher. And yeah, we had parents turning up at the gates in their pajamas and on drugs and fighting and stuff, you know, but the kids came into the school as the one place of refuge in their life. There are problems with parents, but no excuses. And we need to focus on this issue, because these young people, these young boys are the future of this country, and they are going to be dangerous, because they are potentially open to being persuaded by some rather extreme political groups. And unemployed white kids on the streets, well, we see them now. It's going to get a lot worse. We need to have a curriculum which matches their needs. We need to say at 13, 14, you're going to be trained for a job.
Absolutely. I mean, this group will soon no longer be at school. They'll be leaving school. They'll doubtless be reliant on the state in one respect. So there's an economic argument around that. The sense of nothingness and this void in the lives of these young people will arguably just continue. I mean, the usual pattern suggests, Chris, it just continues forevermore and continues to get worse as they then have kids, and the same problem reoccurs.
You come back really, Ian, to parents, and you know what I found with parents, particularly in white working class parents, you know, often they themselves have been through our school system 10, 20, 30 years ago. And they've left, and they're illiterate and they're innumerate. They're not going to come onto your show or any other show and say, look, I can't read and I can't write. So they may want to help their kids, some of them, but they can't do it because they've been so badly educated. So this has been a continuing thing going on for some decades. Ultimately, we do have to get parents involved. And what we've said, and we've been saying this for years, long time before Lord Sewell reported, you need to get the parents back in school. You need to educate the parents. We need adult education class. If you're a parent and you can't read and write, well, what hope is there for your child?
Yeah. We understand as well that young working class black boys don't do that well either. They're kind of sort of in a very similar territory to young working class white boys in that respect. So there is a I mean, you know, people forever talk about the family issue as we have here. Is it just that? Is it I mean, how do we re-educate people that already, you know, you'd like to think people who've become parents already have a certain amount of education by dint of wanting to start a family. That, you know, that should require a little bit of savviness if you're going to bring a human being into the world. So we have a huge issue here, don't we? And I've not heard anyone really other than saying, oh, well, you know, we need families to be more responsible, we need families to be more to be more involved in their children's education. All of that stuff we know, but saying it and making it happen are two very different things, Chris.
There are, you know, when I was a head teacher, I taught in very large, big, comprehensive schools of 2,000, so I've seen the rough end of things. I also taught in a very posh school at the end. Sometimes parents would come to me and they want to help their kids. What can we do to help our child?
Yeah.
And I would say, well, the one thing you can't give them is what you need to give them. That's time. You need to give them time. What a government should do is allow a parent to stay at home, and if that requires tax concessions or double tax concession for one parent who's going to work, all we hear about these days, we have two parents working. Look, the kids need mum or dad or both. We have to support the parents, and we have to give some tax support so that one of those parents can actually stay at home, particularly in those first 5 years. When it's 16 or 17, it's far too late. What really matters is when they're 2, 3, and when they're very tiny. You've got to have time, and we don't give them time. That's the key thing.
Spot on. Chris, great to have you on. Thank you. Chris McGovern, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Did I say champagne in there somewhere? It's kind of just mashing up my words on that one. Thank you to Chris. It's the same subject we touched on yesterday. I don't know what... I mean, as he just said there, the most damning or dangerous part of that equation is, you know, people have kids, and kids are a lot of fun, and they're very challenging, but they are a giggle, and there's a, you know, for some, there's a bit of a status symbol. It's, you know, often a sign of, you know, look what I produced a kid. You know, every time you see a bloke walking around with his baby in his arms in a supermarket, I saw one on Saturday, like holding the baby like he's holding a flipping cup. He's just one at 5-a-side, and I'm thinking that baby's about 3 weeks, so why are you carrying it around? You know, it's like, look what I've done, boys. Look at this. Look, produce this with my own bits and pieces. Fantastic. Bully for you. Well, make sure you look after that kid, give that kid a lot of time and put the effort in, because it will seem like half an hour before that child is then 5, school age, and then beyond, and then into teenage years. I've got a boy that's going to be a teenager next year. I mean, the thought is horrifying on a number of levels. I mean, it's already tricky. You cannot possibly get any more cans of Lynx in his bedroom. I mean, it's impossible. You could try. I'm sure there are people out there that would give it a go. Crowbars could be used. It's a Lynx fest over there. And you can see the differences in, you know, as they go through the ages. I'm not giving any great education here, but it is weird to see it on your own watch when you go, wow, I didn't think I was going to be doing this when I was 18. And this little lad who's just the most beautiful kid, and he's lovely, and we have fun, and we watch TV, and we're out playing a bit of football, and we're doing basketball in the back garden, all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant. But, of course, they develop their own minds, and you can see their autonomy growing almost by the day. Different things that they're interested in, stuff that is no longer funny. The embarrassing dad thing is just, I mean, it's off the scale, that thing. You say the wrong thing, and the eyes roll to the point of almost socket removal in his head. I mean, it's just bizarre to watch all of this. Every stereotype and cliche that a near teenager could tick is ticked brilliantly. So I suppose it's amusing. Sometimes it's disturbing. But nonetheless, it's just a reality, right? Kids grow up. The point is, it happens very, very fast. And if you haven't put any effort into that as a parent, then don't be surprised when that kid gets to 15, 16, 17, that you have real challenges on your hand. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to your calls. Georgina down in London, on this point of the white working classes and the young boys in particular. Georgina, what have you got for us?
Well, you know, bringing up a child is a big responsibility. And just because they reach the age of 18 doesn't mean you retire. You've got to be prepared to put the time in with your children. I've got 4 sons, Ian, ranging from the age of 17 years old to the age of 43. And this neglect of our white working class boys is something that's been happening for a long time. This is not a recent thing. I've seen it happening over the last 20 years, but it's more prevalent now than ever. And this neglect is starting early in school years, where our boys are overlooked and put by the wayside instead of getting the help they need. And they're lagging behind in the education that we as taxpayers are paying for. They're being made to feel useless and invisible because they are struggling. And if you told you're useless long enough, Ian, you begin to believe it. It's criminal. This is unjust and totally unacceptable, and it's got to be addressed. We need a society that nurtures our boys and indeed our young men, you know, so they can blossom into enriched individuals who go out into the working environment and have the confidence to achieve the best of their ability. And it's not going to be attained if they're badgered down and vilified and neglected from an early age. It's become fashionable nowadays, I think, for liberals and the left to vilify our young white working class boys and men, whilst championing those men and boys from other cultures, giving them the opportunities that our children should be given and our men should be given to those, you know, who have the merit for achievement. Too often our men and boys are overlooked, and this is being encouraged by a woke, diversity-led society more interested in placing people of the right skin colour or sexual orientation and leaving our people by the wayside. You know, we need to be thinking about putting our children in schools that actually champion them and don't vilify them. It is not going as it should, Ian, and our children are suffering because of it.
You said, you're absolutely spot on. There's so much in what you said. But at the very beginning, you said you've got a 17-year-old and a 43-year-old.
Yes.
Wow.
I've actually got 5 children. I've got.
But what puts? Hang on.
4 sons and a daughter.
When one, so you're 43, or when they got to the age of 26, you thought, we're going to go again.
Well, I think we're blessed. No, hang on. You know, we're blessed with our children.
No, it's brilliant.
You know, I mean, if you are lucky enough to be blessed with a child with a pregnancy, then that's to be.
No, that is very true on that point. The reason I make the point was based on what I've previously been saying about the amount of effort it takes. You know, there's
hard work.
There's the financial stuff, there's the hard work stuff, and of course, it's one of the few things in life that is for life. You don't often, you don't always have a job. You don't go, this will be my job forever for life. You will be a parent for life, and given the enormity of that role, and I find it both, you know, incredible and privileged, but, you know, difficult and worrying and all those things.
Terrifying.
It is a bit terrifying, but you didn't think, they got to 26 now I can relax. You said, no, let's have another little one.
Well, it was I don't think you plan for something like a pregnancy. The majority of us don't plan.
Yeah.
It comes as a surprise usually. But when, you know, I think if people sat and thought how much it would cost to have a child, that would terrify them. They'd never have them. None of my children will have children. I'm sure none of them have children because they say, Mummy, we've watched you, and my God, it's too much like hard work. And I'm not going to encourage them if they don't want to have children. But
fair dues. Fair dues.
Well, it costs a fortune to look after a child. It costs a fortune. If you weigh it up and sat and thought about it, I don't think any of us would have children, Ian.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of, it's in a weird way, as natural as it is, it's also slightly irrational. Georgina, thank you very much indeed. It comes as a surprise. And when men reach a certain age, it's a surprise when, you know, well, when you can father another child, I suppose. But there it is, 17 to 43. That's impressive I mean, great when that happens. Because there is a thing, isn't there, about having kids that one of the reasons, I said to somebody recently, when you've got little ones, you kind of forget sometimes. I mean, now we've got photos all over the place. Everyone's phone has got 10 million photos in it. So you remember it. But tangibly remember when you see another kid in the park who's like 18 months old, you think, I hardly remember my little boy being that big. That seems like, I almost can't. And apparently there's a sort of nature's reason for that. Is because if you could remember it, like fully, all the time, you just want to keep having another one because you go, oh, it's so magical that age, and they're so cute and little. They're brilliant. I'll have another one. And that apparently, so I was told, is nature's way of making you not have too many kids. Not everybody got the same memo, of course. 0344 499 1000. That conversation, ultimately, though, about working class white boys not doing as well. What is going on there? The other issue is Iran, a terror threat to the United Kingdom. We'll continue to take your calls on that as well. 0344 499 1000.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sarah says, I was chuckling so much at your description of bringing up your son. Brilliant. Mine is now 27. Are you thinking of having another one, Sarah, a bit like Georgina? Maybe that's the time. But you brought back so many memories of the monosyllabic grunting and eye-rolling of those early teenage years. Great show. You know what else is interesting? When a parent does something that's a bit sort of old-fashioned, and as a kid you would have gone, you know, it's not like 1942. It's interesting because the frame of reference of a kid today. So my son will literally go, what do you think it's 1995? As if that's like a long time ago. 1995 was last week in my head. Funny times. Let's talk to Ian down in London. On that first issue we began discussing, far more important, of course. Ian, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Right. Can I just stop on 1 second and go back to one of your guests? Was it Barack?
Yes.
Right. From what he said, there is 300,000 Jews in this country, and then from what he said, 90-odd thousand Iranians have come in over the last few years. So for every 5 Jewish people who have been here for donkey's years, there's one possible terrorist come in.
Well, that's Iranian. What he talked about,
correct.
Yeah, and that's not Iranians that are legitimately settled here. Yes, so 65,000 Iranians have come here illegally, and then there was another number that he added on top of that. But certainly since, and that's just through nefarious means. But of course, you'll have other people who've been here for donkey's years as well. But you're right; it's amazing how that one group has outnumbered almost proportionately the very group that it would see as its arch nemesis. I'm not talking about all Jews or all Iranians, by the way.
Yeah, well, I've got very good friends that are Iranian Jews and also Iranian Iranians, right? And they have no sort of thing. They hate what goes on there. Right, now we go back to what makes it even more pertinent. You've got the Met chief, Rowley, Rowley, goes on an American channel to say what's going on, and yet this is the same guy under the auspices of the so-called looking like he has to answer to, Mayor Sadiq Khan, that has never, ever, ever tried to ban one of these, I'm not going to call them pro-Pali marches, they're not. They're purely anti-Semitic, anti-Western civilization marches, week in and week out. And he's never done it. And really, sort of Khan is always saying, I want to make London the biggest city and everything. And you've got the Met Police chief saying that London is full of terrorists and there's terrorist organisations. What good is that for tourism?
Well, it's not great for tourism, is it really? Come to the UK. We're on high terror alert. We've got 65,000 Iranians. We've got no idea who they are or where they are. So, yeah, other than that, life's great. Come and have a look at our castles.
Yeah, it's just, you could not make it up. But this is the whole point, that, like, with it all, and like Khan, I don't even think he's been down to the ambulance station as it is, right? He's not been seen or anything else, and they've had like the Al Jazeera sort of journalists turn up, and they were told bugger off.
Yeah.
What did they expect? They were going to be invited round for a bowl of chicken soup, right? It was just absolutely, and all I've had on Twitter and everything else, and X as it's now known, is it's an insurance fraud. They did it themselves to get the insurance money.
Oh, I've seen so. I mean, curious, isn't it, that somebody would, really go to that kind of lengths. I mean, put themselves in a position where they might go to jail for many years. I've seen so many conspiracy theories on it. I mean, you don't realise the anti-Jew hate that is out there until stuff like this. And I was just. I don't pay an awful lot of attention to Twitter or X, but when I have a little gander every couple of days, I did spot yesterday. I mean, it's so many people responding to us covering the story who were simply saying, this is made up, it's a false flag, they did it themselves, it was another group, everything you've just touched on. And it's extraordinary that so many people leap to that. They can't get their head around the idea that Jews could be the victims. That's the problem.
And the Jews are actually helping the community. Because as really, and it would have been said by now, and it hasn't come out in the 24 hours, not one Muslim or anybody who isn't of the Jewish faith has come out and said, we asked for the ambulance and they didn't send it round and all this other rubbish. And if it comes out now, it's because somebody said, you say that they didn't want to help. They don't. And it's funny because one of my friends, his sister works as a volunteer at that, I think a boy that went to school there. And they don't. They make no difference who it is. They just see it's an ill patient. Let's get them to hospital.
Yeah. Great point, Ian. Thank you very much indeed. No, great call. Thank you, Ian, down in London. On a lighter note, Ray says, love your story of parenting. It took me back years as my boys are now 54 and 53. Wow, you could be my dad, Ray. We had good times, and then they now have great lives themselves. Keep up the good work. You will enjoy being a good dad as the older with different challenges. I did bump into an old lady once in Tesco. She was in the queue in front of me. She was about 90, but totally with it and, you know, really fit. I don't mean... She was a right sort. No, she was... What I mean is she was... She was very sprightly, and she was chatting. She said her kids were like, it was something like 59 and 61, and I found it like so interesting to hear someone say, I was with my little boy, and that's what started the conversation. She goes, mine are 59 and 61. She goes, by the way, just to let you know, all those worries you have about them, she goes, they carry on forever, they just change. And I thought, yeah, that's a good point. But the good times is the point that Ray makes. Ray, thank you for that. Daniel's in Epsom. Dan, what have you got for us afternoon?
All right, Ian, I was explaining to one of my kids last night what the country was like before 1997.
Yeah.
And I was saying we had Nigel Lawson, a prominent Jew. No one before 97, no one really cared. I mean, my granddad worked with a lot of Jews, and he'd come home with little phrases like, you know, and it was kind of like there was no... I didn't sense then there was much animosity towards the Jewish population before 97.
Yep.
I think as we've had mass immigration from the third world, particularly the Islamic third world, there's obviously a direct correlation with the, well, first of all, it's destroying the country. It's destroying the fabric of Britain. You can see it. I mean, why this government hasn't called a national state of emergency, you know, with hundreds of thousands of men from the third world invading our country every year. I mean, that's insane.
It's a bit weird. It's particularly, I mean, it was insane anyway, and I know I sound like a stuck record, Daniel, but it's particularly insane right now where we are officially at war with Iran, and yet we've had 65,000 Iranians come over on rubber boats with no idea of who they are.
Yeah, well, don't forget, a government's first duty is the protection of its citizens. Now, this Labour government will not protect its citizens, and it will not protect our borders. I mean, every day in the news you see girl gets killed with a bloke with a screwdriver. The next day, some sort of rape or sexual assault. Every single day in the news. And the reality is the victims tend to always be native Britons, white British people, and the attackers always seem to be from these newcomers from the third world that we didn't want or ask for. This government are either intentionally putting us last, they're definitely reneging on their first duty. How this hasn't been in a state of emergency, I don't know, 5 years ago. It gets, I mean, it's just, you can see the decline and degradation in society because of it. And something has to be done. I just hope that somewhere out there, Rupert Lowe, Nigel, Ben Habib can all just have a dinner together and agree on aligning and winning, because I think the people of Britain, the native British people that have been shortchanged and ignored for so long, I think we need a champion. We need someone to save us, Ian.
Well, we've got a government that are monkeying around with windmills, you know, and that's the most important thing. I know that you have to wear more than one hat as a government. I get it, okay, but when you look at the amount of money and the emphasis that is on windmills and solar panels, as distinct from the emphasis that is on out-of-control immigration, illegal immigration, the kind of offences you just talked about, the new live offence of Iranian Islamism and all that goes with it. I think all of that is more important than windmills, Dan, you know, and I don't know, is that meant to be a controversial comment? Because it's, as far as I was concerned, that's the sort of thing you'd be teaching kids, isn't it?
Well, Labour's ineptitude or Labour's refusal to control our borders is directly endangering British people. That's clear. I mean, you've only got to pick up a news website or pick up a newspaper where people are getting, British citizens are getting raped, killed, attacked, sexually assaulted virtually on a daily basis by people that for the past 30 years we've told successive governments that we didn't want here, and they're still coming every day. I mean, it's just the state of emergency. I mean, God, what has to happen for there to actually be, you know, I'm hopeful the next government will be a reform government, and they'll listen to the people and they'll put British people first in Britain, because we've been ignored for too long, and something desperate needs to happen. Otherwise, I'll be leaving in.
Yeah, I might be with you, Dan. Where should we go? Skegness?
Well, I was thinking if Elon Musk was to buy a country, right, and say, right, I'm only going to have...
I love the way you spend your days. You've been thinking this. If Elon Musk bought a country, yeah, that'd be a great place to live in. I like that you're ahead of the game here, Daniel. What? So Muskville, Muskland.
Well, I think something like this. If all the West and Australia and New Zealand and most of Europe, if basically mass immigration from the third world just continues, right, and our society is declining, and things get worse and worse and worse. Sooner or later, someone like Musk will buy an island or a country and say, right, you can come and live here, but you're going to need... And I think it'll be utopia, and I'm going straight to Muskville.
So Muskville, 20 miles. Listen, love it. Daniel, thank you. Daniel in Epsom, who's off to Muskville. We'll carry on his job. We'll do one of those kind of camera vlog things, and we'll just keep it... what are they called? The kind of diary things. I can't think of the name I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. And Dan we can follow Dan's journey. 0344 499 1000. Don't go away if you're hanging on. More calls still to come. Lots more to discuss. Some great messages as well. It's just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Debbie says, get Rayner in as Prime Minister. She will pass her homelessness legislation and then no more hotel bills. The boats may stop. Left and right both happy. I see the logic there, Deb. Thank you for that. Steve says, Ian, this isn't just boys that are being affected. The middle age have it just as tough. This is about being left behind. And you can... Yeah, I mean, there's... God, the amount of guys I know of a similar age, I'd say, 40 plus, who just struggle to get a response from applying for a job. And that is, a bit of a crime scene, and it's demoralising and compounded even further when you know you've got something pretty good to give to a certain... You've seen the job brief and you think, yep, absolutely, that's my career right there in that job ad. No response. That's an outrage. Now, 5 years after the Sewell report... Oh, no, in fact, we've talked about the Sewell report, haven't we? So the screen just took a little while to change there. Let's talk about what's going on in terms of France and combating the extraordinary situation on the Channel. the Home Secretary is now pushing for a payment by results arrangement with France to... I mean, this is cartoon language. It's like something from The Simpsons, this. They're doing a payment by results proposal to the French to combat channel crossings. This is, of course, the New Deal. It's gone right up to the wire. They're trying to work it out. Shabana Mahmood is seeking to renew the, get this, £478 million three-year agreement negotiated originally under Rishi Sunak, we remember it well, to put more patrols on French beaches. Let's have a reminder of Keir Starmer, who got very, very excited about one of the deals he made with his best pal, Emmanuel Macron.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and get the results that people want to see.
I like, you know, for the first time ever, it was announced like this was something, you know, wow. I mean, what's he done here? This is, for the first time ever, we're going to have this. Nothing that he said there means anything, firstly, and certainly none of it has happened. Let's speak to David Shipley, investigative journalist. David, good afternoon to you. I was likening it earlier on to kind of an episode of Roadrunner where they're always looking for a new method to solve the problem, always trying to, you know, surely that we'll try this, we'll get him this way or that way. And this is what this whole channel story, which predates this government, of course, seems to be full of. You know, these crazy, you know, Looney Tune ideas of, I know what we'll do. We'll do the one in, one out thing. No, we'll smash the gangs. No, we'll stop the... No one so far has got a grip of this. It's because if it wasn't so serious, it really would just be laughable.
Yeah, and I think there is this interesting combination in the British state these days of simultaneously being quite sinister in the way it puts us at risk and also being so pathetic that you have to laugh. And you're right, we have successive governments that come up with these ridiculous schemes, one in, one out, you know, trying to do a different incentive structure for the French. Mm-hmm. And all of that is a distraction from the fact there is a single button we could press would stop this straight away. And that would be saying, we are not going to give asylum anymore to anyone who comes here illegally. If you come here illegally, you're going to be interned in a secure environment, so you can't go wandering around the streets, potentially doing great harm, and you will be deported, either to the country you've come from or to a safe country. If we did that, the crossings would stop very quickly because people come over here because they know once they get here, they've got a good chance of getting asylum. Even if they don't get asylum, they won't get deported, and they can rely on our generosity while they're here. Yeah. That's the problem. And that the fix to it is just to stop giving them asylum.
I mean, it really is that easy, isn't it? But for some reason, I mean, some may argue, I suppose, David, that there'll be others that will give it a go, and even if they don't get it, they've got 2 years while their case is reviewed. But of course, there would be no review under this proposal, right? There would just be, there's nothing to review because there is no asylum.
Precisely, and I think that's actually where we have to get to. You know, we're stuck in this cage of laws, and we're acting as if laws are geography. You know, as if we can't do anything about it. But actually, the laws are just a set of ways we choose to run our society. And if they don't work anymore, we have a duty to change them. Yeah, we can just change them. Yeah. And we need a government that has the guts and the willingness just to change the law.
One of the problems, as I said, and it's particularly acute with a Labour government, is that politicians are scared witless of not being seen as nice people. And I think that really, it sounds very crude and blunt to put it that way. I genuinely believe that is at the root of a lot of this. That, you know, we need to, you know, they're terrified of being called racist. They're terrified of being called Islamophobes. They're terrified of not caring for refugees, etc. And that seems to inform all of their decisions, because in the absence of any other sort of logic, I cannot see how they would not employ the very simple system you've just suggested. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right?
I agree. I think we do have the problem that many politicians are deeply concerned with being liked. And I would say, you know, if your greatest need in life is to be liked, perhaps you should be on stage. You shouldn't be seeking to govern a nation. You know, if you are going to be someone who governs a nation, you have to make decisions pragmatically and calmly and rationally for the good of the people of that nation. And if our politicians that we currently have aren't capable of doing it, they should hang their heads in shame and leave the stage.
Yeah. There are many reasons, of course, to be opposed to mass immigration, and open borders policy that we have, and I constantly find myself having to kind of, you know, sometimes you do sort of have to defend why you believe something, because we've sort of changed the lexicon, we've changed the, you know, what are acceptable phrases over the years, so that any time you utter something, it sounds a bit, you know, I don't want migrants coming into my country, to some people sounds terribly offensive, when actually intellectually there's really nothing wrong with that statement at all. We've just kind of weaponized it to sound like you're Eugene Terre Blanche or something, if you dare even dare to go there. Many reasons, though, of course, to be against it. I have no truck in understanding that the average person that comes over on a rubber boat is not a rapist or a criminal that wants to give us harm. The big question for me is that we don't know which ones are, and so we're being asked to play a sort of Russian roulette with unknown people, mostly young men, who could be coming here with malevolent intent on a nation for a number of different reasons, which brings us to what we've been discussing here this afternoon as well, David, on the threat on our streets in this country of Iranian terror. I didn't realise the figures were quite this bad. Since the boat crossings, 65,000 Iranians have come to this country through illegal or nefarious methods. 65,000. You'd think right now there would be a, you know, let's stop that channel thing, because we're at war with these people and they're coming over and we don't know anything about them. You might think that would be a cue for even the most liberal left-wing Home Secretary to go, yep, let's special measures in the channel, please. But they haven't done that, and we've got a problem on our streets. We know this. Let's have a little listen before you answer, David, to Mark Rowley. He was speaking to ABC, the American network, on this issue of what the kind of Iranian threat is in the UK.
Some of the terrorism we've been wrestling with for a couple of decades, like the Islamist terrorist groups, all the way through to some of the tension in communities, the way those things now link together is really troubling. And I don't know if you've ever reported it, but we've disrupted over 20 Iranian-directed plots in the UK in the last couple of years. Sort of my team's working with our security service, MI5.
Are these sleeper cells that you're dealing with that have been awakened by the war, or are these known entities?
Sleeper cells, not really a term I would use, but they're known entities. These are ongoing operations, and we've seen over the last few years the sort of hostile state directed threat from sort of Iran, Russia and China sort of steadily going up, and we've had a lot more operations. And if you look at UK news, you'll have seen quite a few prosecutions on that effect in the last couple of years.
So MI5 are onto it. The head of the old bill at the Met, David, he's fully aware of it. 20 scuppered attacks, apparently. Thousands of young men coming over on boats. I mean, you don't have to be, you know, a detective to kind of see that there's a problem here.
Well, exactly. And actually, in a way, this sort of activity we're discussing here by the police and MI5 is quite similar to the stuff that we were talking about the politicians trying to do to solve the small boats crossing. None of this should be necessary. You know, the idea of having a border for a nation which is secure, so you know who is coming into the country and who is leaving it, is just the most obvious thing in the world. And particularly in an island nation like Britain, it's very easy to secure our borders. Yeah. The fact that we don't do it, and we haven't done it for many years now, is the wild, crazy thing that we've somehow convinced ourselves is normal. And, you know, of course, hostile actors, states across the world who you know, want to do us harm will use the fact we have totally open borders to send people in. You know, these men can turn up on a boat. They've all thrown their documentation away, so no one really knows who they are. They can claim to be whoever they want to be. It's a very obvious way to get agents into the country. And it's absolutely deranged that we are allowing the situation to continue where our borders are entirely open.
Indeed, you know, we also know that, you know, Iran's foreign minister has explicitly warned that British lives are in danger following our decision to allow the Americans to use our air bases. That's not going away. You know, we've already had some incursion into British territory with what happened in Cyprus and
the arrest of Fazlane.
Indeed, and also, you know, Diego Garcia. You know, the evidence is all there for everyone to see. While simultaneously, this afternoon there are boats pulling up on the shores of Dover and other similar areas on the south coast, full of Iranian people, of which we don't know anything about. And on top of that, of course, those that already exist among us, the sleeper cell, so-called sleeper cell kind of contingent as well. And yet, very little from... I appreciate you don't want the Prime Minister or the Home Secretary scaremongering people and frightening old ladies so they can't sleep at night. But bearing in mind the terror threat right now, according to John Healey, the Defence Secretary, is substantial, meaning an attack is considered likely. So given all of that, they're very quiet while this underpinning of potential terrorism is happening all around us.
Yeah, I think it must be very hard if you are someone who has believed in multiculturalism and mass migration your whole life to admit that it has been a disaster and it has made us less safe and less prosperous and is continuing to make us less safe and less prosperous. I recognise that must be a hard admission to make to oneself, let alone to the public. But that's what we need to get to. We need to admit that the whole thing has been a disastrous experiment and it needs to end.
Yeah, indeed. David, great to have you on as ever. Thank you. David Shipley, he is the investigative journalist, regular with us on the programme. Your thoughts on all of that? It's really about changing the terms of discussion so that all those phrases, like when David said that the multicultural experiment hasn't worked, that doesn't mean... And anyone with a brain knows this. This is not about colour. It's not even about religion in its conventional sense. It is a cultural clash that is central to all of this, and pointing that out doesn't make you a wrong. It doesn't make you a right winger. It doesn't make you a nut job. There's plenty of people, if you look for them on the left, that actually there are some good Labour MPs that speak quite strongly about this stuff. You know, being strict on immigration used to be the kind of conversations that would be around in a working man's Labour club back in the day. No one thought, oh, you had to be a right winger to be concerned about some of those areas. It's about having a sensible policy. And no one could look at what's happened in the last 10, 20 years and go, oh, that's a sensible policy. Yeah, just people rock up on a boat. That's nothing wrong with that, is there? That's fine. No real checks. Absolutely zero consideration for social cohesion. We've never had a problem, you know, from Jews coming to this country, Windrush generations. All of that has never created the problem that we're talking about today. But there are issues and there are cultural clashes. There are clearly serious questions over social cohesion and assimilation that have just been left alone, never been addressed. And that is a crime scene. 0344 499 1000. It's 10 to 3. This is Talk.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kay says, for our safety, why are they not closing the borders? No more room at the inn. They don't do it because they don't want to do it. This one from Mark. I'm hard at it to help pay this welfare bill. If the welfare bill rises to 402 billion quid by the end of the year, like they say it will, that's approximately £5,700 per man, woman and child in this country. Make sense of that. I'd best do a weekend and a few more hours. I think you've got to, Mark. You need to start putting a graft in. Not working enough hours. Right, before we go back to the phones, it's the Voice of Doom, day 14. For those who don't know, it's the mystery voice bit. We're not reinventing the wheel with this, of course. It's just a mystery voice thing, but it is political, OK? So it's a politician or somebody massively associated with politics, but usually the former politician, left-wing, right-wing, young or old, dead or alive. Who is this?
There's hardly any experience.
Let's hear that again.
There's hardly any experience.
If you think you know who this is...
There's hardly any experience.
...then you can message us on 87222. Don't be phoning in. That would be crazy stuff. No, none of that malarkey. But you can message in 87222 if you know who this is.
There's hardly any experience.
For some reason, Finn, our producer, is doing this in sign language. He's quite good at it as well, although if you are deaf and listening to this, you might disagree. Here it is again.
There's hardly any experience.
87222 if you think you know who that is. And we'll tell you after 3 o'clock, of course. Let's go to Tim over here in West Yorkshire on the working classes. What's happening, Tim? Good afternoon.
Oh, hiya. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
I'm a bit nervous. But
that's all right. Sounding fine already, Tim.
Yeah, I was listening to your conversation. I taught for many years. I started teaching in college and I taught in secondary school.
Yeah.
Taught special needs. I'm now just a part-time SEN tutor for kids who don't go to school.
Yeah.
But about the boys' achievement and white working class boys, believe me, the schools are doing nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Interesting.
I mean, I did a lot of supply, and I remember being at a school, and we had a training session after school. We did 2 hours on how to improve white boys' achievement. It was just a case of we all got together, discussed things we could do in class. That was it. They ticked the box and we moved on.
Right.
That was it. There's nothing. There's no interest in white working class boys.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? I mean, this report as well, Tim, does seem to suggest that the emphasis is on family life more than the schools. But you think the schools should be doing more?
No, not necessarily. But what I'm saying is, if the school, if we've got all this positive discrimination towards all these various groups, the schools are really down on that. They're really big on that. You know, if you're trans or whatever,
yeah,
massive amounts of extra help and support for you. What I'm saying is, I agree, it is a societal problem. It's mainly the parents, in my experience, that are a problem. However, if the schools are going to put resources into, they're putting nothing, because it's not fashionable, it's not woke, and it's not PC to help white working class boys, because we're the oppressors, remember. We're the bad people. And in most schools, I'll tell you now, I've been in many schools because I did lots of supply and etc. The staff who might have bite my lip all the time because they are so left-wing woke, most staff rooms in schools, that I'm kind of centre-right, but no doubt my views, if I'd have expressed them in many...
Oh, you'd have been out the door, mate.
I'd have been constructively dismissed.
We took a call yesterday on exactly this from a guy who, no longer teaches, but did so. He found the exact environment that you've just described. He said it was just there all the time, and you couldn't... he said if he told his mates that he'd vote... his colleagues at school that he'd voted for Brexit, he said he'd have been, out the door, essentially. It's like, how mad is that?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a Reform member, and, there's no way...
I wouldn't say that too loudly in the playground, because you'd be...
Absolutely. It's just unbelievable. It's so toxic, and it's so weighted against...
It's bizarre, isn't it? And yet I genuinely believe this as well, Tim. I think people instinctively are actually centre-right. I don't think you have to try to be centre-right. I think that is part of the natural predisposition of being a human being, is that you gravitate to that part of the spectrum.
It's common sense, in my view.
Well, it's completely common sense,
the party of common sense.
100%.
And like talk there, the station of common sense. It just...
Yeah.
But there's no common sense in these woke environments.
There's no common sense anywhere, Tim. It's just gone out the flipping window. I don't know what's happened. We might, all have to move somewhere soon. Daniel, our previous caller, and if you heard him, said that what if Elon Musk started a country? Would we all go and live in it?
Well, I'd put my name down.
Yeah, you could be the teacher. I could do the DJing at the wedding. I don't know why I'd do DJing and doing this for... Yeah, but, we've all got a role to play. We've all got a role to play. Love it. Thank you, Tim. Lovely to speak with you. Good luck with everything. And well done on keeping up the teaching you are doing, because it's very easy to leg it from that profession because the pressures are immense and sometimes disturbing when you're teaching kids that have got genuine challenges. I understand all of that. So thank you to people like Tim and people like Tim. 0344 499 1000. Sorry, Chris in Bournemouth, we are going to come back to you in the next section, so don't disappear. We've got the voice of doom. Will we find a winner to this voice?
There's hardly any experience.
87222 if you think you know who that is. Right now, it's 3 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon. Yes, welcome back to the home of commerce. There's so much to get through. We will continue, of course, to take calls about the dangers to the UK when it comes to the Iranian response to our inclusion in the war. There was that arson attack in Golders Green just yesterday. There seems to be a group connected to this from a previous unknown Iranian terror organisation. But what is the reality? And with the head of the Met talking about how many Iranian terror attacks they've thwarted over the last couple of years, you have to scratch your head as to what is going on. Also this afternoon, Lord Sewell set to warn Keir Starmer today that successive governments have ignored his warnings, leaving white working class boys the worst performing group in England at school. The Tory peer who wrote that key race report says the group is still languishing at the bottom of the class. So what's behind that? Why do you sense that white working class boys are still on the lowest rungs of the educational ladder? It's disturbing stuff. Nothing's really done about it. Hasn't changed in 5 years. And the Conservatives claim that Ed Miliband's net zero fanaticism is harming the UK economy. The Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, is attempting to push for Rosebank oil and Jackdaw gas in the North Sea. Those projects she wants to proceed. Dear old Red Ed is saying, no, I'll have none of that. Thank you very much indeed. Move on, go and build a windmill. That's where we're at. We'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. So many comments to come on this. Amazing response on both subjects. I'll come to some of your messages, 87222, in just a moment. Let's move then to this curious story of the report into Offshore Energy UK that warns that Ed Miliband's North Sea policies will triple the UK's reliance on foreign gas. The report predicts that share prices will primarily benefit foreign producers like the US, Qatar, Norway and Australia. Let's have a listen to Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho clashing with Ed Miliband today in the House of Commons.
Can you be clear with the House? He knows we will need gas for decades to come. Yep. Why does he prefer to import dirtier gas from abroad than use the gas that we have in the North Sea?
I don't, and we continue to use the North Sea, and ours is a pragmatic position. Is the lesson of this crisis a fossil fuels crisis to double down on fossil fuels, or is it to drive forward with clean energy? We believe clean homegrown power that we control is the answer.
Let's speak with Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst. Catherine, good afternoon to you. So based on that very short clip, who's got the stronger point, Claire or Ed?
Oh, clearly Claire. I mean, if you look at the government's strategy for electrification, they want to install 600,000 heat pumps per year. That's the target installation rate to get people off gas and oil for heating. Well, we've got over 68 million homes in the UK. So at an installation rate of 600,000 per year, that will take 47 years. And we're not even close to reaching the 600,000 per year target. So obviously we're going to keep needing oil and gas for decades. And that's just in the domestic heating sector. Sure. Clearly we use it in cars, in industry, for industrial heating, for industrial processes, and so on. And so, yes, of course, we should maximise our own domestic production. And for Ed Miliband to suggest that he's doing that is just simply not true. That is a misrepresentation of government policy. There is a ban on drilling. There is an extremely hostile fiscal context, which is driving companies out of the North Sea and causing 1,000 jobs per month to be lost in the sector.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned heat pumps there as well. I was reading again about the, this absolute fascination with every home's got to have these things, which is a sort of source that divides the room anyway. I mean, even I think I mentioned this last time we spoke, Catherine, even people like the environmentalist Dale Vince are against heat pumps because they're just not the most efficient way of doing things. And yet it seems that everybody knows that apart from Ed Miliband.
Well, exactly. And I mean, at this point, just about everybody is telling him, including members of his own party, that he's wrong, that he needs to compromise on this. And he is refusing. He just refuses to listen. And I just don't see how it's a sustainable position that any minister can dig in their heels to this extent and to refuse to acknowledge changing situations. He says, we promised that we wouldn't restart drilling in the North Sea and people expect us to keep that promise. Well, I disagree. There's a war. When circumstances change materially, you really need to adapt to that change.
Of course, he did say we are using oil from the North Sea.
Yes, but he has a plan to accelerate the decline of the North Sea. So yes, he doesn't. He's not saying we're going to stop using the North Sea today, but that we could get so much more out of the North Sea, and his policies are accelerating the decline of that production.
Indeed.
So there's a number of very simple steps that he could take. Remove the windfall tax, remove the ban on drilling. I mean, Norway has just made in the past year significant discoveries adjacent to our sector of the North Sea. Now, the boundary between our sectors is a political one, it's not a geological one. So those finds almost certainly extend into the UK continental shelf. But we can't verify that because there's a ban on drilling.
Yeah, and that's
So
just the North Sea. I mean, there's other areas as well inland where we could also be looking.
Well, we could. I would caution there, though, to say that we haven't done the appraisal work to know to what extent it's
so
economically viable.
There's a time issue, if nothing else, associated with it.
There is. I mean, there's quite a lot of work because there really has been very little appraisal work done. I personally would lift the ban on fracking and allow the market to find out. But we could immediately start increasing our North Sea production. We could get Jackdaw and Rosebank into production as soon as possible. And we should also put in place tax incentives. I mean, Norway did this during COVID, actually. They were very concerned that the economic environment in COVID would deter the sector from continuing their exploration and appraisal activities. So they put in specific tax incentives to really encourage those companies to go and explore for new fields, which is why we're seeing all these discoveries that Norway's been making. So we should do the same thing, and we should amend our regulations to really target fast delivery of new production in the North Sea. There is a lot of oil and gas that's still there. I mean, people say it's a mature basin. Well, so what? I'm a mature person. That doesn't mean I'm close to retirement, much less close to my demise. So we shouldn't equate maturity with death. We should recognise that we have this significant resource, and we should maximise it as much as we can.
Well, you'd have thought so, wouldn't you? I mean, it's all logical stuff, but you know, Ed Miliband seems to be, and I keep making this point, seems to be left almost unattended. I mean, I don't believe an Ed Miliband should ever be left unattended anywhere, frankly, but he's unattended in this department. You don't often hear anything really. The Prime Minister seems to have said, like, you're left to your own devices. Here's a massive budget, Ed. Go do your thing. I don't know if they carved out some kind of deal, but he seems to be a fairly autonomous figure in government.
Yeah, and this is my point. You know, he seems to be immune from scrutiny, and this is not appropriate. I mean, you've seen unions reducing their contribution to the Labour Party as a direct result of these policies. So it seems staggering to me that when their donors are pulling back on their financial support for the party, he's still allowed to carry on doing his own thing. It's really time that Keir Starmer took control. I know that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but he really needs to get a grip of the situation. Ed Miliband is damaging the country. And it you know, that seems an extreme thing to say, but it's actually the truth. Yeah. By refusing to use those resources, his own strategy shows that we're going to still need oil and gas for decades to come, and yet he has no plan to secure those supplies.
Yeah, it's a bit mad, isn't it? Listen, Catherine, thank you very much indeed for your time as ever. Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst, on where we go next with this. Ed Miliband does seem like... I'd be willing to be convinced otherwise, by the way. If somebody said, no, actually, you got Ed Miliband wrong. No, his thinking is this. And, you know, if he gets all his panels in, all his windmills, you wait. You know, we're running the entire country just off that. Well, somebody's got to make all that stuff work as well. So there is that. This one in from Debbie says, there was a Labour bloke on a lesser channel the other day who said the majority of the welfare bill is pensions. So the retirement age should be raised again, and then people would look after themselves better. But migrants get everything free at 22. Where is the logic in that? I mean, it's true that, and thank you, Debbie, it's true that pensions do form the biggest part of the welfare bill. But that's not to say that the remaining part isn't also massive, growing and out of control. So two things can be true. That, yeah, people are living longer, so as a result, there is more money being spent on pensions. If you look up on the HMRC website, by the way, you can see your pension payment that you would get. I don't know if that only kicks in after the age of 40. I don't know if Finn could do it. But I was just monkeying around on this thing the other day, and I'm going to get £212 a week. Happy days. This is the government pension website. Your own, you put in your, it'll tell you when your retirement age is, because it's obviously not till you're 67. I can't put any more national insurance in than I've put, so I obviously paid the full whack throughout all of my life. And I think it was £212 for, can you do it, Finn? Or are you too young to do it? I mean, Finn is only 24. I mean, you wouldn't think that to look at him today. He looks about 48. But that's another story. 0344 499 1000. Chris is in Bournemouth. Chris, what have you got for us? Hi.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon, Chris. What are you thinking?
This Iran thing at the moment.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer needs to get his head out his backside.
Go on.
Because this country is already at war with Iran. Their troops are already here. And the worst thing about it, Ian, is we're paying for them to be here. Because they've come in as illegal immigrants.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a basic fact of life, right?
But these payments to these illegal immigrants here must stop. And Keir Starmer needs to start rearming this country. Because believe it or believe it not, you said earlier on to another caller, he won't say anything about it because of frightening the population of this country. I think the population of this country already know what's going on before Keir Starmer even opens his mouth.
Well, I mean, the one thing that is going to happen is that, firstly, come May, Labour are going to get an almighty kicking in the local elections, Chris. And then come 2029, and I don't think there's going to be an election before then. I mean, even if Starmer has to walk the plank, they'll just replace him, but Labour remain. It could be even worse, by the way. So they will pay the ultimate price at some point, but by then they can create a whole lot more damage, right?
Well, yeah, they can. They can knock us back into the Stone Age here.
Yep.
That, I think, to be honest, that is his plan. To be quite honest, to knock us back so far that it's going to take us decades to recover. And as for you saying that, like, come May, yes, he is going to get a kicking in the polls. But if it comes to the fact where he's going to get replaced, I think out of spite, he will call a general election.
Do you think so?
I think so, yeah.
But then he's going to put himself in but he'll lose his job, won't he?
Yeah, but he's going to lose it anyway, Ian.
That's true.
At the end of the day, he'll lose it any day.
Yeah.
So if he takes a kicking in the May elections, which he is going to without a doubt, then they'll start turning around and saying, we've got no confidence in you, we want to replace you.
Yeah.
He's going to turn around then and he's going to say, well, fair enough, I'll call a general election.
Well, I mean, if he does, he loses. I'm pretty sure of that, Chris. Thank you for that, Chris in Bournemouth. Let me remind you, there are 6 weeks and 2 days to the local elections. It seems crazy that when we were talking about this sort of before Christmas, which seems like yesterday, it seemed like such a long way. 6 weeks and 2 days. All I would say about the local elections, and you can tell me differently, depending on where... I know council elections, there's a lot of council elections throughout England. Well, throughout England, Wales and Scotland, but hear me out. So throughout England, there's council elections and there's some mayoral elections as well. Now, you don't often see a lot of campaigning with council elections. There are exceptions. You do start to get those leaflets through your door from your local councillor, not your MP, your local councillor. So that will probably happen. But the biggest story of May the 7th will be Wales and Scotland. There's mayoral elections as well going on, not the London mayor, not. The Manchester mayor, not. So, but there are mayoral elections. But the big story, Wales and Scotland. So the entirety of both of those countries could change overnight. So Wales has only ever been run by Labour. It's only ever been run by, I think I'm right in saying that. It's never been run by anybody else. Could go to reform. The SNP could get God knows what sort of kicking in... sorry, the Labour Party could get God knows what sort of kicking. And the SNP, who would become almost like oblivious to anything because they'd been so reduced in their credibility over recent years. See Sturgeon and Co for details. They could make a bit of it. So the SNP might do, oddly, don't know why, quite well in Scotland. It's not really reform territory. But in Wales, it's been said for a long time reform could take it. Now, here's my wider question. Where's the campaigning for this? I mean, it's 6 weeks and 2 days away. I know you ramp it up a bit more as you get closer. But bearing in mind what is at stake, I'm sure I should message Richard Tice or David Ball and say, what is, you know, is it? I'm sure they will say, no, that there's a massive plan in place. Watch this space. But I am slightly surprised that given what is at stake, I mean, Labour, for example, are Labour campaigning now in Wales? The entirety of Wales could go from being red, as in Labour, as it's been forever, to something else. And probably reform based on polling. Where's the Labour campaigning? Not seen a lot of reform campaigning either. What is going on in Scotland? Are the SNP giving it large on the streets of every part of Scotland at the moment? Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Right, let's do the voice of doom. Have we got a winner? Remember, this is the voice we played you.
There's hardly any experience.
Who is that? There's hardly any experience. These are some of the guesses. Caroline Lucas's brother. I mean, it's really interesting that Finn doesn't think she has a brother, by the way, but it's not the right answer. Dennis Healy, no. Chris Huhne, Ed Miliband, Simon Hughes, Rishi Sunak, Rory Stewart. It's none of those. Ken Dodd, Earl Spencer, Matt Hancock, no. James Murray, Jesse Norman, David Mellor, Zach Polanski, all wrong answers, which means we haven't got a right answer. It rolls over to tomorrow for day 15. Stand by for that. More calls, comments and messages on the way next. This is Talk.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I love this. Somebody here says, no name given, why don't we pay unemployed English people to go to France to patrol the borders? It would help unemployment and our economy. It will stop more boats than the French. It's a genuinely good point. Youth unemployment is rising dramatically, so you would pay people to do, rather than giving 438 million quid to the French. Why don't we... I think the problem is the French would go, no, you can't come here and do this. So you just have a chain of people, really, constantly patrolling the border. There won't be any boats, will there? There's too many unemployed people. It might work. Lynn says OAP pension should not be part of the welfare bill, as we pensioners have all paid into the system, so we've actually paid for it. I find it frustrating when I hear that it is. Yeah, you're right. It's not a benefit. An old age pension is not a benefit. It just comes under that department, so it's therefore lumped in when people talk about the welfare bill. Let's go to John in Cornwall on migration and the French as well. John, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Ian.
Hello.
Yes, I mean, the answer historically is very simple. Yeah. The reason the French and the French police don't do anything is because the French are a nation of cowards. It was Great Britain that had to bail them out in World War I, World War II, and before that, in 1870, the Franco-Prussian War, the Germans had encircled Paris, and it was the British that said, back off.
Okay.
And, you know, when you do this, the French themselves, they've been relying, nearly 1,000 years, they've been relying on the Bayeux Tapestry to prove that they got something.
That tapestry would be the end of us, won't it?
It will, but that was the only time they can show they actually won anything. But on a serious note, it is about cowardice. If you take, for instance, other countries, I won't list them, in the EU that have closed their borders to that problem, and yet the French can't do it. And there's only one word for it, and they won't like me saying it. They won't like it on the airwaves, but they are a nation of cowards.
Interesting. Yeah, you might be onto something there, John. Thank you very much indeed. A nation of cowards, succinctly put by John in Cornwall. This is Russell in Rosendale. What have you got for us, Russell? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
Well, what it is, actually, it's about... You talk about working-class lads. I think it's working-class children in general. My wife and myself made a decision in 1988...
Yeah.
She was a teacher. I worked in aerospace, which you could get made redundant from. We made a decision that one of us had to stop at home to look after our children. The daughter had just been born that year.
Yep.
I stopped at home, and I stopped at home for 6 years.
How was that?
We gave those children a good base grounded in.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Everything.
Did you like being the person at home?
I loved it. I tell you what, it's the best job I've ever had.
I've always thought, you know, when people talk about stay-at-home mums, and you know, I know from my own experience of my other half that it's a very, very difficult job. It's full of, you know, there's all sorts of things going on. But I would, you know, I'd happily be the one doing it, if I'm perfectly honest.
No, I loved it because I watched them grow up.
Yeah, of course you did.
And not only that, I mean, my son, well, both my son and daughter, gained degrees from Lancaster. My son went on, he took his masters there.
Yeah.
He went on, he became a barrister.
Nice.
Called at Middle Temple. He did his PhD at Lancaster, and he's now head of law to a rather large organisation.
Wow.
My daughter's now taking her solicitor's qualifications exams after teaching English in Spain and other jobs. And I don't think, basically, I mean, when you consider that, all right, my wife was a teacher, I was in engineering, we didn't have a lot of money. Nothing, because we had to...
But you had a lot of support.
Well,
You have bucket loads of support to give to your kids, right?
Well, that's it. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And we gave it to them, and they've done well. And in fact, with the school he went to, both schools, because he went to the Catholic school in the valley where we lived.
Yeah.
And he went to the Catholic secondary school, and I would imagine that there's not many people come out of either of those with a PhD.
Yeah, I mean, they've done incredibly well. It's interesting they've both gone into law as well, and something that you or your wife were not in.
No. Funny enough, Alexander, I shouldn't really say his name, he read politics at first.
Yeah. And then took a diversion into law.
Yes, he did his GDL.
Well, yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's just, his knowledge is clearly incredibly rounded. I mean, that's an amazing story that they've done that. And you would genuinely attribute some of their success to the levels of support you were able to give to your kids growing up.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Both of us. And it wasn't just that. I mean, when my daughter was just before she was her 10th birthday, my wife was told she had cancer. She never actually, she never went into remission. She fought it for 8 years and died when my daughter was 17.
That must have been difficult.
It was.
For everybody, obviously.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
I know there's no good age for things like that to happen, but you take my point.
What we didn't do, we didn't tell the children. I mean, they were clever enough to understand, I mean, what she was going through. I mean, they had computers so they could work it out. But, and funny enough, that was another area. My son wanted to read computing sciences at Sheffield.
Wow.
And I explained to and he turned around one day and he said, after seeing what had happened in the aerospace industry, he said, I'm not following computing.
Fair point.
Because I can see one day that computers will produce computers.
Well, he was right about that as well, wasn't he? What about you, Russell? You're retired now?
Yes, I am.
And how is life not having to wake up in the morning?
Well, I do wake up in the morning. That's the trouble. I wake up early in the morning. I wake up too early in the morning.
Yeah.
There's not much I can do about it.
No, I get that. I have a bit of that as well. But do you enjoy now that you've kind of, produced two, what clearly amazing kids who are doing really well, and the marriage you had to your beautiful wife and all of that? Do you look at it now and think, yeah, I can enjoy, a different phase of my life now?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I enjoy going fishing. I enjoy doing a lot of things. I used to shoot at one time, but I cut that out a few years ago.
Yeah.
But
you said that like it was an addiction.
Yeah, it was. Fishing is an addiction.
Yeah, fishing. I know. I've got a few mates who fish. I never got into it myself, but I know that those that do, absolutely. It's apparently a bit like golf in that respect, and you've also got something in your hand that's not a dissimilar shape. But yeah, I'm told both very addictive. Listen, Russell, I've got to move, but it's been brilliant and enlightening talking to you as well. Thank you, Russell in Rossendale. Interesting about staying at home and looking after kids. It's not, of course, as possible as it once was, which gives you an idea that of how the cost of existing has shifted dramatically. Even if you've got one partner in a pretty good job, it's still really hard to make it all fit. 0344 499 1000. More of your comments on the way. Just gone 3:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
25 to 4. What about this for a story? The UK's worklessness crisis is worsening due to sickfluencers on social media coaching people to maximise benefit payouts. Policy Exchange researchers found that claimants are using AI tools like ChatGPT to generate strong application language, often without genuine medical evidence. Gareth Lyon is Head of Health and Social Care at Policy Exchange, joins us now. Hello to you, Gareth. I mean, in a way, I'm not surprised by this, but when you sort of see it written out, your jaw does drop a little bit.
Yes, it's really concerning. This does pose a major threat to the integrity of the UK's health and disability benefit system. We're obviously seeing with the trends that you mentioned there, so with sickfluencers, with online communities and AI, that this is our largely static and online assessment system for health and disability benefits can be easily gamed. And there's a large grey area where we're seeing a big growth in benefits and the size of claims. Yeah. And this is putting the whole sustainability of the system at risk.
And I guess with, I mean, look, if somebody has some experience of how to get your way around the system and they put it on social media, you know, we can argue that forever as to that's a bit weird, bit strange. But AI, I mean, that's a whole different thing, isn't it? Because AI tools are pretty good, and this is AI in its infancy, relatively speaking. So, you know, ain't that hard to find out? You stick your circumstances in, you can modify it, you can re-ask a question, you can try a different AI model for a variant of the thing, get it confirmed, and, you know, you're good to go, right? If you're looking for a claim that you might not technically have been, you know, necessarily entitled to, or maybe, you know, you're borderline, then AI is your best friend.
That's absolutely right. So AI is designed to be helpful to whoever is using it for whatever purpose they're trying to employ it. It's not designed to try and make the right decision or to ensure the best possible outcome for the taxpayer or for the system as a whole. So the trouble is that the health and disability benefit system has not been keeping pace with these advances in technology. AI allows people to come up with responses really quite easily, and as you say, we'll continue to get better and better at this. It's now starting to draw on the content that from the kinds of communities and social media influencer posts that we were talking about before. So it's getting better and better. But of course, we can't stop the drift of technology here. We need to recognise that technology is there and adapt the system accordingly.
Sorry, do continue, Gareth.
That's all right. So that's why we're saying there needs to be a much stronger role for in-person assessments. We need to have a much stronger requirement for medical evidence to make sure that these are legitimate claims are being dealt with appropriately. And those are the two things we think will make a very substantial difference to make sure that legitimate claims are being processed, but also that the system can't be gamed.
And we're talking about, I mean, such huge numbers on all of this, of course. Incapacity Disability Benefits Bill, around about £65.5 billion annually. A lot of forecasts suggesting that could easily tip over the 100 billion. In fact, I can't see any reason why, based on current movement, that's not going to happen at some point frighteningly soon.
That's right. So 16.9 million people in the UK are now registered as disabled. So that's about a quarter of the population. So that's been a huge growth over the last 10 years. And clearly it's a problem. Part of the problem that we're facing here is the lack of clear requirements for medical evidence to make sure the right people are getting support.
So a quarter of the population are disabled?
That's right.
I mean, that's an extraordinary figure, isn't it?
Absolutely, 16.9 million people, and it's been a huge growth over between 2014.
So this is the adult population, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, there's been a big growth in it. We know that mental health is a factor in all of this, and I'm going to put the usual caveat in, Gareth, that I always do. I don't know any taxpayer that doesn't begrudge their tax pounds going towards helping somebody with a disability. It's what partly makes us a civilized world. It's brilliant that we can do that, so that if somebody does discover either through illness, accident, whatever, that they are, you know, in a position where they can no longer work or function in the same way, we have a system to help them out. But anyone with half a brain cell is going to look at the rise, the incredible acceleration in those numbers, and ask the very obvious question, what the hell is going on?
No, absolutely. And there are many legitimate mental health claims, of course. But what we're saying is there needs to be medical evidence to support these claims, so we know that the right people are receiving it. The trouble is, right now, that's not required. And for certain conditions, it's very easy to go through the applications process for personal independence payments, PIP, or for access to work, and to receive quite substantial payouts without any of that kind of evidence at all.
Do you reckon I could, like, if I randomly went on a website and looked for a bit of PIP, do you reckon I could get that? Is that possible? I mean, I've got a job. I mean, I earn, you know, good money, just to be brutally honest about it. I mean, I'm not entitled to it, but if I said, you know, I've got some issues and, you know, psychologically, there are problems, could I literally get PIP?
Yeah, so I'm not going to advise you exactly how to do it right now.
No, I don't want you to do that, because that would create another problem.
Yes, absolutely. It does depend a lot on self-diagnosis. So it would, the system as it is now, to a great extent, the assessment system would trust you in terms of what you were saying about any condition that you may or may not have.
It is fascinating. Listen, Gareth, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Gareth Lyon, Head of Health and Social Care Policy at the Policy Exchange. I've just got the form up, actually, from the government website. Let me just do a brief application. I will keep doing this. I'll read some messages out and I'll come back to it. I'll let you know if I've got it by the end of the hour. Vincent in North Yorkshire says, Ian, the UK imports 1.2 billion quid in French wine annually and 230 million in cheese. Let's tell them we'll place 100% tariffs on those imports if they don't stop illegals from their end. The French producers and workers would riot within days and force the government to sort it out. Serious solution for a serious problem. I think so. I love that thinking. We're going to stop your cheese. Because you don't, I mean, the French wine thing is that if I buy a bottle of wine, I mean, the days of going, oh, well, the French produce the best wine, that's kind of all gone, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of South American wine that you would find that I think probably sits in a superior place, Portuguese wine. The Australians seem to knock out a tasty bottle of red as well. So there's a lot of other choice. But the cheese, I mean, you can get cheese all sorts of places, can't you? Get British cheese, don't need the French cheese. So that in itself is a bit extraordinary. But yeah, anyway, every time somebody raises that, the tariff thing, the response that comes back is, well, the French would just put tariffs on our goods. Or would they? Jason is in Wiltshire on the migration story. Jason, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the call.
It's a pleasure. What are you thinking?
Well, it's just a sort of thinking sort of a little bit half sensible. I think we won't need the ECHR, Human Court of Human Rights, to have a go at us for anything. We allow them to come in, but you get nothing.
Yep.
There's no handouts. There's nothing. So you're more than welcome to come here, but you've got nothing to come to.
Sure.
I pretty much think if you're going to sort of take the meal ticket away from them, it's not really going to be so enticing if they're going to come here and get nothing. And I actually think that would probably start deterring them, because like you said, if you're, you know, at the moment they come here, they get a house, they get this, they get a phone, they get art lessons, driving lessons, whatever it is. Let them come here, but there's no house, there's no free phone, there's no money, there's nothing.
I mean, you would, you'd struggle.
We have a camp in Kent called Camp Kent, like we've got Camp Calais. You stay there. We're, you know, with the ECHR, we're not refusing them entry. We're not doing nothing. You come here, but you get nothing like you get in France and you get everywhere else.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that the obvious answer to that, you've just raised it there. You know, we do assist people, and nobody is suggesting that we would, based on your plan, that we'd stop doing that, but it would just become the pull factor would be reduced. And it was Macron himself, if you remember, Jason, that said the UK has to stop the pull factor, because there is a pull factor. Even if you look, I mean, not everybody gets a house or a phone, whatever, but you do get enough to. You do get a hotel, you do get a roof over your head. These are facts. You get a roof over your head, you get accommodation, you get 3 meals a day, you get warmth, you get medical care, and you get all of that from literally jumping on a rubber boat in Calais to arriving here. all of that will definitely be given to you. And I think about £39 a week. I know that's not loads of money, but add it all together, it's loads of money. So there's a pull factor, right? If I was coming from Eritrea, from a government that isn't necessarily going to kill me, but one I didn't like very much, I would consider that a result.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it's, you know, for them to come over and what they're going to get, it is a result, because you go to France, I don't think they get the free hotels and the free meals a day and the, you know, everything that they're giving us. It's literally, just stop the handouts. And like you said, we're not chucking them out and saying you're not coming in. Yeah, come here, but you get nothing. You'll get stuff if you know what I mean. It's just sort of, we're just giving them. We're just the meal ticket.
Yeah.
And if we stop being the meal ticket, I think the incentive would go. I mean, if you get the stray fox that keeps coming in the garden, don't put the food out, it won't come.
It kind of is a bit logical, isn't it, like that? But it isn't working like that because governments are scared witless of being bad people. They're scared of the accusation that they're racist. They're scared of the accusation they don't care. They're scared in case somebody who's desperately escaping a tyrannical regime gets caught up. And there's all of these things. And yet the response, the alternative is the one we've currently got. £6 to £8 million a day spent on accommodation alone. That doesn't include lots of other areas such as NHS and the issue around cultural assimilation. I mean, the list goes on. You're speaking common sense, Jason, which might be part of the problem in this upside-down world. Thank you to Jason in Wiltshire. While I've been talking to Jason, I've been paying full attention. I've been filling out my PIP form. Just going to do date of birth, 23rd of the 2nd, 86. It's got that bit done. What? I'm going to continue filling it out more in just a second. Will I get my PIP allowance granted to me? Apparently, I don't need to have a doctor involved in this process, but I'm going to put all manner of sort of ailments down just in case. I'll let you know in a second how well we've done. Chris says, if you want the cheapest way to achieve net zero, then fit solar and battery to every house in Britain. Scrap feed in tariffs to pay for it and offset grid bills. That would be cheaper than all the schemes and programmes. People won't buy heat pumps until energy costs are a lot cheaper. It seems gone are the days of £1,500 a year energy bills. And I know this is like everybody can quote the story of like, oh, when I first bought a house. But when I first bought a house, and this was 98 or something. I genuinely put 20 quid a month direct debit for electricity and 20 quid for gas. So it's 40 quid a month. And that's, what, £480, 440, what is it, £480 a month, a year, is that right? Have I got that right? My head is just clouded today. But anyway, we're in that ballpark. Yeah, and then it just sort of shot up, progressed. It did start to go up, by the way, after I'd been in there for a couple of months. This one in from David in the Cotswolds. I wonder what Mrs Thatcher would do if it transpired she'd been putting up IRA members in 4-star hotels with 3 meals a day. I wonder what Starmer will do if it transpires that some of the 60,000 Iranians have become the enemy within. And again, thank you, David, for that. Why is that an inconvenient subject? Why is that a mischievous subject? Why is that a distraction? Because the left would have you believe, no, you can't say. No one's saying that every one of the 60,000 Iranians that have come in through nefarious means in the last 10 years are terrorists. But what if, 1% of the 60,000, 1% had ill intent to this country? That still puts you at, 600 people? 600 people in your midst, if it was just 1%. 0344 499 1000. My PIP application results are coming up. More comment from you. Kevin O'Sullivan's here as well. This is Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm trying to do my PIP application here. I'm scrolling through the gender choice. It's quite a significant two-tone binary fluid. What's that mean? Oh, that's Finn. Finn's that. I might just click that box there. Right. Ethnicity, pasty white boy. That's a bit offensive, isn't it? Who would put that on a government form? Better tick that one. Right. Okay. Apply. It's loading. I'll let you know. Mark's in Lincolnshire. Mark, what have you got for us?
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon to you. Fire away.
Afternoon, mate. It's a shame, really. If you come to me earlier, I'd have just told you, your PIP form there, if you just put it on there full of crap, yeah, you'll get the maximum award, definitely.
Well, I'm about to find out.
Yeah, on this question of, doing what's needed for this country, being called racist, racist or all this stuff, and being the reason that people just don't ever do it. This is obviously the case. I mean, we've all seen this over the years. The problem is going forward for me, you see, and we'll go back to this thing again. You've got to look at, I don't dislike any of the reform supporters listening to this. I actually really like them. I don't want them winning the Fell for It Again award, which I think they're going to with reform. Because the way I see this, Ian, you're quite right in what you're saying and what David, I forgot his surname now. Shipley. What David Shipley was saying is absolutely correct. What you actually need is a leader, a party that's essentially saying, no more refugees, no more immigration, more people have to leave than are coming in, because we've got a real problem in this country. We've got an excess of about 10 million people in this country that we need to address. That needs sorting out. Now, realistically, you probably maybe get rid of half of those people. When you're talking about the illegals, those on benefits, those not learning English, that kind of stuff. But David's right in what he's saying. The minute you try and do any of these things, you're going to be called a racist, you're going to be called far right, you're going to be called extreme, neo-Nazi, all the buzzwords, all the magic words they have to shut you down. So what you should really be looking for, as far as I'm concerned, is a party that doesn't care about that is quite openly saying, I don't care. We're doing this because we want to help the country, because we love our country and it needs doing.
Yeah.
And the only party that's doing that, I'm sorry to say this to the Reform supporters, the only party that's anywhere near that, well, is literally that, is Restore Britain.
So you because you've said this before, you don't believe that Reform will be true to the spirit of what they're saying?
No, they won't. I mean, they were set up primarily as an immigration party at the end of the day. I can remember back in the day when it was just Richard Tice on his own, and he'd be on talk quite a lot. And I was well up for reform at the time, because Richard was a lot more authentic in himself, you know. Nigel came along, yes, he's been able to bring some members into the party, and, you know, they've done fairly well at the last election and what have you. But it's all showmanship with Nigel. Nigel has a really big problem.
Was reform ever Richard Tice on his own?
Yeah, pretty much was. I can remember that. I can remember back in the day, 2019, 2020, listening to Richard, because he used to have his show on a Sunday, didn't he? As I recall.
It was leader when Nigel dropped out, wasn't he? Because Nigel said, I'm going to go to America. Yeah. And Richard took over, and there was a couple of weeks when Richard was doing all the TV interviews. And then Nigel sort of came back.
Brexit stuff. Yeah. Nigel disappeared for quite a long time.
Okay.
And it was literally just Richard. And he wasn't even an MP at the time, was he?
No, none of them were MPs at the time.
He was just plodding along selling the party as best he could.
Okay.
And I really liked him back then. And what I've seen since Nigel's come along, Nigel's very much egocentric. It's all about his ego. It's all about the razzmatazz. It's always about...
Is that different to anyone else, though? Is that different to Ben or to Rupert or to Kemi or to Keir? Are they all sort of to a degree greater or lesser? Is it really about, is it all about benevolence and doing the right thing, or is there a percentage of every politician that is all about the, it's not an altruistic profession, really?
I think what you've got to look at is, until recently, nobody ever really knew who the Prime Minister was, did they? Let's be honest. I mean, till Thatcher came in, nobody really knew who Thatcher was. Nobody knew who, Tony Blair particularly was in the round,
Okay, so you're all right. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. So these things are imminently possible. Listen, Mark, I've got to run because we've literally hit the clock, which means apologies to Darren in Surrey, who I was hoping to get a quick word with, wasn't able to. But there is a moment here of jubilation in the studio. Absolute jubilation. I've only gone and done it.
Because you're going home in a minute. Yeah.
Well, there is that. No, I applied for PIP during the show.
And you got it.
I got it.
Well, of course you did.
Come on! Which means I'm not here tomorrow, but some loser who's decided to go to work for a living will be.
I'm getting 10 grand a year out of it. Do you know why?
Go on.
Because I'm suffering from anxiety.
You do look a bit anxious.
And
today.
also Motability have given me a free car.
Yeah.
On the benefit system because I've got anxiety.
Nothing to do with your wonky legs.
No, it's the good thing is that you can also get all the information you need about how to con the welfare system on TikTok. There are these sickfluencers who teach people how to con the system.
Yeah.
Good, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
Tell them all they can't have the money. Right, we will be, of course, covering... I want to know why the police haven't yet decided whether or not Bob Villan was guilty of a hate crime for chanting death to the IDF 9 days ago.
Yep.
We're going to look at a question that Ed Balls asked on Good Morning Britain yesterday that will blow your mind, basically suggesting to a Jewish campaigner that it was the Jews' fault they got attacked because they'd been nasty to Sadiq Khan and all those Muslims who prayed in